Lord Bob, the chillest. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend. Overnight, Messi got his penalty shot saved and Argentina tied with Iceland. France came very, very close to failing to beat Australia. World Cup's heating up. I'm Bob Ross. We're gonna paint a picture today. Okay, so I'd like this to be YouTube content, but I'm not like recording this for YouTube. This is sort of a crash test for something, some like concept that I'd like to turn into a YouTube video. I'm not sure exactly how it will work, so I would love to hear your feedback on how clearly I'm explaining things. Stuff like that. Let's see if we can get things set up. Can you paint in a Google drawing? You can't, right? So maybe I need a paint window as well. Presumably going to be the wrong size, whatever. How did I play Magic the Gathering earlier? How did I like Magic the Gathering? I was playing Magic the Gathering Arena, which is an open beta, and I feel like it's like Wizards of the Coast's approach to solving the Hearthstone problem, like trying to get into the Hearthstone market or whatever. They did a very, very poor job of achieving that, in my opinion. I think Magic the Gathering Arena is a game that you have to try to enjoy if you already liked Magic. So alright. Slaying the Spire. Feel free to ask questions today, guys. I'm feeling very chatty. I want to just rant for a long time about this game, and that's basically going to be the stream experience today. Hey, Patanda. Good morning, Morningstar. Hey, Tiny Zoo. Overexplained chat draft. You're right. Should we do Ironclad, Silent, or Defect? I feel like I can be more eloquent about Silent than the other classes, but I could probably do any of them. I'll try Silent first. The questions have to be game related. That would be ideal. Existential crisis. Existential. Sorry. Existential crisis. Hello. Welcome to Slay the Spire. I don't actually want to talk that much about pathing right now because I think that 2 hours from now, the things that I want to say about pathing will be much simpler to understand. Pathing is something that you can't talk about that much until you know the values of the different floors. And knowing the values of the different floors is sort of the entire game. So we're going to try to talk about that, and then once we know the values of the floors, the pathing becomes pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. You just try to work out how to get the best values out of the floors you're going to. Christopher Twitchins. Played Magic for 15 years. Yes, I have forgotten to turn off Twitch integration and only realized when people started voting on cards. Alright, so, spreadsheet man. Let me know if I'm writing stuff and it's not on your screen, or if it's extremely difficult to read, or anything like that. Right now we have a silent deck. We've got 5 defend, a survivor, and neutralize. So it's pretty easy to get some useful values here. Yeah, front-loaded damage in this deck, and we have block in this deck, and we have weak in this deck. I feel like that's going to be a little bit too small in general. No, I'm not sure that will fit on the screen. We'll have to do our best. Is Spreadsheet Man my superhero name? Possibly. Possibly. Silent has 34 damage in this deck. Silent has 33 block in this deck. Actually, that's not true. 33 damage in the deck right now because I haven't upgraded Neutralize yet. And 1 weak in the deck. Can I make all of the columns that size? Yes. Total cards is 13. And so we can get a per cards. Here. By dividing the amount of damage by the total cards. We block for 2.5 per card, we deal 2.5 damage per card, and we apply 0.07 weak per card. We can also do per turn by multiplying that by our card draw. Right now we draw 7 cards on the first turn and 5 cards after that. We're gonna have to guesstimate a lot of stuff. So we're gonna call that 6 point, no, we'll call that 5.5, I guess. Do I enjoy playing Spreadsheet Simulator Eve? I've never played Eve. I'm going to call it burst instead of front-loaded damage. No, because you can burst in a number of ways. You can burst something on turn 5. This is... I like calling it front-loaded damage specifically. That is deliberate. We probably don't need this many significant figures. We can talk about energy as well, sure. There's going to be a lot of stuff to put here. Energy per turn is 3. I'm not going to get too much into energy right now. Energy is the other big resource on top of card draw. I sort of need to. This is not going to be fully enumerated, this stuff. I'm just sort of giving you an idea of what's happening. So, like, basically, card draw and energy are big resources we use to output. In Excel or Google Sheets, how do you lower significant figures by 1? I just clicked on, like, a button that says decrease decimal places in the toolbar. Up above where the screen is cut off. Isn't the per energy calc more useful for damage and block? I don't think so, because we want to look at our output per turn, and we're not in a situation where it's reasonable for us not to be able to play all of our damage cards in a turn. If we draw all of our damage cards, well, if we draw a hand and we want to play all of our damage cards in a turn, we're probably going to be able to, unless we drew 4 or 5 strikes, which is just not very likely. Generally speaking, our deck can block for 14-ish, can deal 14-ish damage, and it can apply weak every other turn or so. This is not the full story, though, of course. How could it be? Another thing that we care about beyond averages, and this is very, very, very important, is we care about variance in what our deck outputs. So you want to get away from those numbers as quickly as possible, basically. And you want to start thinking in terms of distributions. So our damage per turn We know that on average, we're dealing, I'm just going to say 15. We're dealing about 15 damage per turn if we want to deal a bunch of damage. So that's like average. I can tell you right now that the most damage we can possibly deal with this deck is 21. If we get 3 strikes and are neutralized, we could deal 21 damage. So there's a possibility that we deal this much damage. We can't ever deal 20, 19, 18 we can deal. That's actually like fairly common. We can deal 15, that's extremely common. It would be semi-unusual to deal 12, 9's even a little bit less usual. 6 is like very uncommon, and sometimes we can deal 0. So this is basically me giving you the middle finger. This is the distribution that we're looking at for how much damage our deck can deal in a turn. Hey, Wilry. I think I'm going to try to explain the basics like once an hour or so for the new people so they know what the fuck I'm talking about. This is what, and this is probably inaccurate, this is what I'm thinking about in my head when I think about how this deck deals damage. I do not have an accurate calculation of exactly what it is. And it might be sort of interesting to see how wrong this is, because I'm certain this is wrong. I didn't even make a y-axis, obviously, but like proportionally, I suspect that like, well, the amount of time we deal 18 and 12 is probably about right. This is too high on 15 for sure. It should be more like this. But in general, you want to be able to think in distributions in this game. And you might not have to think about the entire distribution, but you want to think about the important parts. So you might want to think about, like, I really want to hit there. Can I do it next turn? Like, what are the chances that I can actually do that? Should I play for the possibility that I draw a hand with a lot of damage, or should I not? Should I, you know, block this turn rather than dealing damage so that I can deal damage over the next 3 turns instead of the next 2 turns? Would it be useful to create a quick site that let me run these numbers on the fly? I don't know how quick it would be, Jeremy, because there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think generally a site that analyzed numbers like this descriptively would be a pretty cool tool to have. There's a lot of stuff, though. Like, you want to do this in terms of card draw and in terms of energy, and you've got not only all the cards, but also all the relics, which can change a bunch of stuff. And then different turns can be different, so that gets messy too. So anyway, having said all of this stuff, we have to decide whether we're upgrading a card or upgrading a random relic. There's actually more stuff that I want to say before I talk about that. Alright. So this is like compartment 1, right? This is our deck. We know things about what our deck does, and those are cool. Let's look at compartment 2, which is the threats against our deck. So our deck has to kill a bunch of stuff to win the run. We got Act 1 hallway fights, and you could subcategorize these into like the hard Act 1 hallway fights and the easy Act 1 hallway fights. Act 1 hallway fights are not threatening enough that I'm going to bother doing that on the sheet, but I do it in my head. So keep that in mind. You've got the Act 1 elites, Gremlin Knob, Lagavulin, and Tri-Sentinel. Lord Jawworm, exactly. This is legit the starting deck with no math on the enemies or relics or cards or value. Yeah, but you have to do this for your current deck as you're halfway through the run as well. So, Act 1 hallway fights against Gremlin Knob, Lagavulin, and Tri-Sentinel, the elite fights, and we also have to care about the Act 1 boss, whoever that should be. So in this run, it's Slime Boss. Now, right now, this doesn't matter as much, but like later, and to some extent right now as well. We want to be thinking about the other stuff in the game. So Act 2 hallway fights, which I'm going to subcategorize into with chosen 8x3 man. Oops. And I think just other. We'll go like messy to enemy and other. At some point you have to categorize these so that your spreadsheet isn't ridiculous, right? Act 2 elites or tri-slavers, gremlin leader, and Book of Stabbing. Birds, I've never had a deck that sucked against birds, Zuzu. You're right that birds exist, but I think they're other. A lot of people are like, are you saving your Thorns potion for the bird fight in Act 2 and stuff like that? Because birds are, they die to a very specific thing very emphatically, but my experience with the bird fight is that it dies to all the other things pretty well anyway. They just don't take much damage from the birds, unless I took Philosopher's Stone for some reason. And then we care about the Act 2 boss, which could be anything. We don't know what it is right now, and then we care about Act 3 eventually. So these are the threats against our deck. We don't care too much about events that we might run into, because they're not going to really kill us. We care about maximizing the value of each floor, so we care about going to an event because it's very good for us, or we care about going to a hallway fight because there aren't that many events that would be good for us. But we do not care in particular about them in terms of threats against our deck, I wouldn't say. So with all of this knowledge, we have to try to work out how to optimize our path through the dungeon to get the most stuff to win the game. Oh, and I didn't say this, but like, let's say that right now Gremlin Knob deals us 30 damage on average, and Lagavulin deals us like 25, and Tri-Sentinel probably deals us like 18 on average. Slime Boss right now with the starter deck would kill us, so that's just RIP. And then all the Act 2 stuff is just RIP too. We're going to try to make this stuff better, but of course it's not that simple, right? What we're actually looking at is a distribution of damage that we might take, and how do I change the size on this? It's really not working. Well, whatever. The distribution is going to be, you know, sometimes we'll take 1, sometimes we'll take 2, sometimes we'll take 3. I'm just going to draw it like this. So we have a distribution of damage that we actually take into fights. It is a discrete distribution, so I shouldn't be drawing a curve. I should be drawing bars, but this is much simpler. And as we go into a fight, we need to keep in mind, like, if I get lucky in the fight, it could go really well, and I could take basically 0 damage. If I get unlucky in the fight, I might take 22 damage. If you have a potion that's very good against one fight and not so good against other fights, you might want to hold it specifically for that fight because it will warp the distribution a lot. Say I think this is what I'm taking in terms of damage against the Book of Stabbing. If I use a Thorns potion, maybe all of a sudden I think the distribution looks like this, and now I'm taking way less damage. So you want to try to maximize wherever that potion is being used. Are we sure that they aren't just penises I doodle? Not 100% sure. So, whether or not to upgrade Neutralize is a lengthy. I just clicked on a torch through this whale's head. A lengthy decision-making process here. First off, I don't think that trading Starting Relic is quite as valuable as a Neutralize upgrade or a Random Common Relic on Silent Ascension 15 for me. It may be different for you. You're a different player than me, you'll make different mistakes from me, and so your experience playing the game will be different from mine. But my experience having tried switching to boss relics a lot and just sort of theorizing, looking at their values and stuff, is that I'm pretty sure that I can do better by upgrading a card or obtaining a random common relic. My experience with playing Silent in Act 1 is that getting to a point where the elites that I'm having to fight, the Gremlin, Knob, Lagavulin, and Tri-Sentinel, we want to bring these numbers down to, like, I'd love for it to be more like this. That's sort of like 7 maybe. That's sort of where I eyeball a functional Act 1 Silent deck. And to get the numbers to 16, 10, and 7, I want a neutralize upgrade, and I want an upgrade on an offensive card usually, and I would love to have an offensive potion as well. So, because I want a neutralize upgrade and an offensive upgrade of some sort, I'll often look at campfire availability to try to decide between common relic and neutralize upgrade. Here we've got quite a lot of campfires with an elite or two. So this elite fight is going to hit us for a decent chunk if I take common relic, probably, because common relic's just not going to do as much as taking a neutralize and then adding an offensive card to the deck at some point in here and upgrading that as well. So we're probably going to have to rest, is what my eyeballings look like. If we common relic, there's a decent chance that we have to rest at some point in this act. I think that if we upgrade neutralize, there's a significantly lower chance that we have to rest. Resting gets us much less value out of a campfire than upgrading would. So I think I like the neutralize upgrade for this exact layout. But that's like, that's the level at which I'm thinking. I'm thinking about how to maximize this path through the act. How to promote my deck to a point where it can handle the threats that it's facing in this act, and how to do it while getting the most out of each floor. And so, because of all that, I'm gonna try and neutralize upgrade. Very basic game rule thing. The first 3 fights of Act 1 are easy fights. They come from a different list of encounters from the other fights that you fight in Act 1. These are hallway fights specifically. Typically, your starting deck does not get to a point where it can take on the 4th fight of the act very easily until you've had like at least 1 upgrade and a good card or 2 added to the deck. So going for 4 early fights, early hallway fights, is generally not worth it. There's a big binary thing there, where the first 3 fights are very good for you, and then the 4th fight, on average, you're taking quite a lot of damage, and your deck just isn't really prepared for it. So because of that, we're going question mark over hallway fight right now. Ancient Slumber, thanks for the raid. Welcome, Ancient Slumberers. Hope you're doing well. This is one of the worst first fights we can get, but we're only going to take 1 damage in it probably. We're doing some over-explaining of Slay the Spire today, which means I'm talking a lot. And I don't know if people are enjoying it or not. Hopefully you're enjoying it. As we're playing this fight, I'm thinking about how much damage I'm expecting to take in the fight while I'm playing. If I was gonna say, like, if I was gonna try to think about how my bandwidth of my brain is distributed here, probably like 50% of my brain bandwidth thinking about this game right now is trying to conceptualize how the rest of the fight is going to deal damage to me and how much damage I expect to take. And as I play each turn, I know that like some turns are just a given, right? Like you have a heuristic, like you can deal lethal damage, and so you play 2 strikes or whatever. This is not how I am thinking about the game at all. And I think that getting away from thinking about the game that way will make you better able to like do well in the game. So I like regularly miss lethals like this on stream, because what all of my brain is thinking about, I am spending absolutely 0 energy thinking about if I have lethal damage, I should deal lethal damage. I just don't think about that at all. I'm spending all of my energy on that, thinking like, okay, so if I played Survivor here and Defend or whatever, I would expect to take 0 damage ever. I might look at my draw pile, because this is very vital information. What's in your draw pile changes the output that your deck is going to give you in the future. So I know that I have 2 strikes next turn. So I can pass the turn here and never take damage. That's already a solution that is satisfactory to me. Like, there's no way that I can possibly take damage if I pass the turn and play these 2 strikes next turn. So, like, I can do that. There's no reason that I wouldn't really arrive at that conclusion over other conclusions. Because once you've reached a point where you're maximizing everything that's left to maximize in the fight, there's no reason to do anything other than that. I'm gonna backstab, dagger throw, and accuracy. So backstab is a lot of our trouble. A lot of our trouble with like Gremlin Knob in particular and Tri-Sentinel. See if I can get this a bit wider capture so I can talk about these fights a little bit. Gremlin Knob and Tri-Sentinel in particular, we want front-loaded damage. We want to front-load to kill Gremlin Knob outright, which is a difficult thing to do. This is why Gremlin Knob deals quite a lot of damage to decks in Act 1 in my experience. And we want to front-load to kill one Sentinel in the Tri-Sentinel fight, and then like part 2. Then attrition out other 2. Generally speaking, you're playing like a chip game against the remaining 2 Sentinels after you kill 1 Sentinel. So getting a backstab is immensely valuable for Tri-Sentinels. It gets us so much closer to just killing the first one straight away. It's very valuable against Gremlin Knob as well. Gets us 11 damage closer. Against Lagavulin, backstab is not anywhere near as valuable. Against Lagavulin, we want sort of... Lagavulin is a longer fight than the other 2. Lagavulin has more relevant health. It tends to be, well, okay. It's not a longer fight. Tri-Sentinels is the longest fight, but Lagavulin's, the dangerous part of it is longer than the Tri-Sentinel part that's dangerous. So, backstab doesn't help us as much against Lagavulin, is what I'm trying to get at. If we take our backstab, we now worry a little bit less than we were before against Gremlin Knob and Tri-Sentinel. We are still almost as much worried about Lagavulin. If we see cards which are going to help us against Lagavulin, something like a Noxious Fumes is incredible in general, but also very strong against Lagavulin. Something like a Footwork's very good against Lagavulin. Even just like an Infinite Blades is very good against Lagavulin. Lagavulin's more about extended output over a longer fight, is what I'm trying to say. There isn't much of a decision here because we're about to go to a store, so we just take this curse. But every time that you're running into a decision where you're like getting something for a downside, you've got to think about whether what you're getting is worth your downside. And I think it's fairly easy to conceptualize why getting 150 gold and putting a curse in your deck and then going to the store and removing the curse is fine here. There's more to say about it though. Can I briefly go over other starting options you have not been presented? Giving up HP, transforming cards, picking up a rare card. I will if we play a second run and we get them, Jack the Black. But I can't go over every single starting option right now. It's just too much, unfortunately. Jarbs is 4'7", true story. I met him at the meetup. That's actually true. It's true. I was sitting down at the meetup though. Alright, so there's more that goes into this store. Let's look back at here. So at the start of the game, we've got this front-loaded damage, and I picked up a backstab, so we're gonna say that maybe we're up to... It's weird to use a backstab to change how much damage you're dealing per turn, because obviously it only deals damage on turn 1, but maybe we're up to like 18 damage per turn or something now, and cool, whatever. Front-loaded damage is great for Act 1. It's great for fights that can be solved with front-loaded damage, but like even in Act 1, you can solve Tri-Sentinel with front-loading, you try to solve Gremlin Knob with front-loading, but generally don't do a very good job of it. Lagavulin's almost impossible to get a deck that can solve with front-loading in Act 1 for. And then by the time that you're into Act 2, like, because stabbing is not going to get solved by front-loading with Silent, Gremlin Leader is almost never going to get solved with front-loading. Tri-Slavers is a simple front-loading fight that's actually the same as the Tri-Sentinels, more or less, but like these guys are not getting solved by front-loading, this guy's not getting solved by front-loading. So in general, right now, you've got the biggest threats of Act 1, other than Lagavulin, we want to front-load for. And then almost nothing in Act 2 do we care about front-loading for. So I think I'm going to come to your question eventually, Umasi. So this front-loaded damage is very good for us right now. It's quite valuable. But as the run goes on, it becomes not valuable. It's significantly less relevant. You get fewer and fewer times when it really matters. And also, you may want like a threshold of front-loaded damage, like I want to be able to deal 40 damage in the first 2 turns or something. But as you get better and better cards, like maybe you have a glass knife in your deck, or maybe you have an upgraded dagger spray even, or something like this, or you have a backstab in your deck like we do. The number of cards you need to dedicate to getting that number, where you're going to deal 40 damage in the first 2 turns, goes down. So removing strikes very, very early is actually detrimental to us immediately. It becomes valuable later. Strikes are not valuable very much later on in the run. But strikes right now are pretty good cards. They're pretty good against Gremlin Knob, they're pretty good against Tri-Sentinel, they're pretty good in the hallway fights. So a lot of people look at this situation and they simplify. You simplify and you say, I'm going to receive 150 gold and I'm going to become cursed. I'm going to go to a store and I'm going to remove the curse for 75 gold. That's cool. I gain 75 gold. Hey, Nucade. Thanks for the 8 months of Twitch Prime. Agbo Musho to you as well. Much appreciate all the support. Front-loaded damage means damage that hits straight away, Wobbly Wombat. So an example of front-loaded damage is Strike or Backstab. An example of non-front-loaded damage would be Noxious Fumes or 1,000 Cuts, sort of. Front-loaded damage is damage that goes like this. Like straight away, it's dealt. You have scaling damages. You can have a more linear scaling damage. Like 1,000 Cuts basically deals the same amount of damage every turn. Or you can have like incrementally scaling damage, like Noxious Fumes deals more and more damage every turn. And they can all like mix together in lots of different ways. It's a messy term. But that's what I mean when I say front-loaded. So, like, and then the counter argument to this is like, okay, but you're paying 75 gold to remove a curse. What if I just wanted to play 75 gold to remove a strike or something like that? And like, one, removing a strike right now is not very exciting. We aren't that excited about removing a strike right now. It's a perfectly good card right now. But 2 is like, and this is a microcosm of a very inefficient way, in my opinion, to think about the game, and a way that you can like just spend a lot of time thinking about stuff that ultimately is tangential to what you need to be thinking about. 2 is, it doesn't, like, that's not the decision here. We're not comparing removing a curse to removing a strike. It is not even clear to us that we will remove the curse right now. We're going to go to the store with 265 gold. If there's a kunai in there we can afford, we may very well be leaving the curse in our deck. If there isn't something super valuable to buy, then sure, we're probably removing the curse. But you're oversimplifying the thing. What you need to think about is how valuable is this 150 gold? How much of a drawback is the curse? And the like removing a strike thing is one tiny variable in that, but there's all the other stuff that you have to be thinking about as well. It turns out to be a very large space to examine. I think that it is pretty easy to see, though, that when you do examine it, taking 150 gold for the curse is correct there. Removing strike isn't really valued at 75 this early in the game. Don't value stuff in terms of gold, either. Value it in terms of equity. I'm always talking... Okay, I'm not actually. Oh, I haven't abstracted it that far yet. I've been talking about how much damage I'm taking in fights and stuff, because damage is a very easy thing to understand. We don't want to take damage, right? The reason we don't want to take damage is it changes how likely we are to win the run. So if we take more damage from Gremlin Knob, 1, it might kill us, which sucks. But 2, it's also going to restrict us from taking more aggressive paths through the rest of the act. We might not be able to fight more elites. We might not be able to upgrade at campfires. We might have to rest at them. And all of these things are going to cause our deck to be weaker. And a weaker deck is less likely to win the run. And that's like why we care about all of this stuff. So actually, I'm going to add another element to the screen. I'm just going to say right now, Right now, I think that we are about 82% likely to win the run. That's the number that all of this comes back to. If I can make a decision to make that number go up, I want to make the decision. If a decision I'm looking at will make the number go down, I don't want to make that decision. Equity is our chance of winning the run, as we said here. And I think that I walk into a silent run with about a 75% chance to win right now. This is based on my own flaws as an individual player. So maybe a perfect machine can win 90% or even more of the silent runs that it plays. But I think that I walk in with about 75%. And I think that picking up the backstab, getting the curse, and buying, I believe I'm buying bronze scales in the store, has brought that equity up significantly. How do you calculate equity? In your head. You have to make it up. Until we come up with a machine which is able to like play Slay the Spire on its own, that's something that's being calculated sort of on the fly in your head. It's not meant to be an exact number, right? The point is, it is the number that your analyses are tied to. If you can make it go up, in your opinion, then you're doing something right. If you are making it go down, in your opinion, then clearly you're doing something wrong. And tying it to that is really important because it saves you from thinking about, how am I going to get the most gold here? How am I going to take the least damage in this act? How am I going to get the most upgrades out of this act? Because all of these things will influence your equity, but may not influence your equity as impactfully as other things that you have to be considering too. Everything gets tied back to equity, and ultimately all of your decisions are about increasing it. Take Juzu Bracelet because you like events. I would not take Juzu Bracelet because I don't like events. Also because it's not good here. Alright, so at this store we've got lots of options which do different things in sort of cool ways. So we could load up on like damage commons that are just like front-loaded damage. And this would be the best way to get better at killing Gremlin Knob and the Tri-Sentinels in particular, I believe. Bronze Scales might even be better than that at them. You can buy a fire potion too. If you're sitting here and you're thinking, I really want to kill Gremlin Knob, and that's the only thing you're thinking about, then like, yeah, like fire potion, dagger throw, sucker punch, these are the cards for you probably. Cards and items for you. If you were thinking, oh, I really want to make a sweet combo deck, we're gonna like catalyst, bouncing flask, and kill stuff, then Bag of Preparation's a very good thing to use to do that. Draw an additional 2 cards at the start of your first turn, basically +2 card draw for the fight. Bronze Scales is Bronze Scales the only scaling thing here? Caltrops is a scaling thing here, but it's sort of funny. Bronze Scales is like a Caltrops, except you don't have to draw the card and pay for it, so it's significantly better. Bronze Scales is the only thing here, in my opinion, that has a eye specifically toward the way that the game scales into mid-game, which is a very important thing to be looking at. In Act 2, we can look back at Act 2 now, because we're already at a point where this decision cares about Act 2. In Act 2, we talked about the bird fight, right? And how sometimes we struggle with it. I put that in other. Yeah, like we now take like 2 damage from the bird fight if we buy Bronze Scales, probably. That's on average. A lot of the time we take 0. It's very good against Gremlin Leader. Against Gremlin Leader, Bronze Scales probably dealing like in the vicinity of 40 damage in the fight. Against Book of Stabbing, it's obviously incredible. Against Book of Stabbing, Bronze Scales is probably dealing somewhere in the vicinity of 40 damage as well. It's not quite as incredible against Tri-Slavers, but it's fine there. So Bronze Scales is a purchase toward these problems, which are immediate problems for us. They're problems that we want to solve. We're already starting to worry less about Act 1 with our backstab and stuff. Oh god. Sorry. Okay. Just buying bronze scales here. We have the option to buy a deadly poison, which is interesting. Costs us 24 gold. So one question is the gold likely to be relevant anytime soon? There isn't likely to be a reason for us to care about gold unless this question mark cares about gold, in which case it would care about 50 to 75 gold. And I think would be short 75 gold at this question mark. And then in Act 2, we're going to go to a store, and we may end up being short a relic, like short a bit of gold on a relic if we buy the deadly poison. So the gold is relevant to us. It's not that relevant to us, but it is relevant to us. So the other question is, like, is the card good in our deck? Deadly Poison definitely improves our deck right now. Deadly Poison is actually a very good card against Lagavulin, for all the reasons that I've been saying that, you know, you want specific things against Lagavulin. Oof. I'm probably not going to buy it. Let me try to construct why. If I'm offered bracelet in a chest instead of a shop, are there cases where I choose to leave it behind because I wanted more fights? Yeah, it is possible to come up with that being a good idea, but it hasn't ever happened, I don't think, Morningstar. Usually, if you want more fights, you can just take the path with more fights on it, and having the ability to guarantee that your question marks are going to be safe is sometimes very, very valuable. The bronze scales purchase move the equity. I already calculated the bronze scales thing. That's like my idea as we leave the store. So I'm not going to buy Deadly Poison. I've been playing this run for 38 minutes. Lol. I'm not going to buy Deadly Poison. We're not going to get to remove a strike in this act, most likely. And as we get further and further into the run, and we're pushing up above 90% chance to win and stuff, the most dangerous way, the most dangerous thing that can happen to us, in my opinion, is we draw a hand that can't defend well. We're going to more and more care about linearly scaling or incrementally scaling damage sources, and we're more and more going to care about deploying those and defending ourselves while they kill the enemy. We already have bronze scales, so we're already at a point where if we can defend ourselves, we have something that will just kill the enemy on its own. Because of that, we don't want a ton of strikes in our deck as we go later into the run. We want them right now, but we don't want them later. Deadly Poison's like a better version of Strike. And while it is much better at doing things than Strike is, like it deals better damage, the damage persists, it doesn't block. And so for us to put a card into our deck that doesn't block right now is difficult. It's difficult to justify that when we're already doing very well in most of the fights in the game, and when most of the fights that we're not doing well against in the rest of the game, it's because we're not blocking enough or we're not scaling damage enough. Okay, so I'm not taking a Deadly Poison. Probably not taking damage in this fight. Poison is also quite bad against Slime Boss, that's correct, Sparky. But it is good against Lagavulin, and Lagavulin's like the toughest fight in the immediate future for us. So taking it because of Lagavulin, I could definitely see. Is the value of the future purchased relic quite high because relics can have such a large impact? In this run, like speaking tactically, what's likely going to happen is that before any Act 2 elites, we're going to go to a store in Act 2 with somewhere in the vicinity of 250 gold. And we're going to have a chance to buy a relic or a card or two, which are very valuable for killing the elite that we're worst at killing at the time. And thanks for the Twitch Prime sub, Craig. Agbo Moshori as well. Glad you're enjoying the show. And so, because of that, there's a bit of additional value on the gold there. It's not just the relic. It's also the fact that at that point in Act 2, we're quite likely to be able to get a store before elite fights in Act 2, and we're quite likely to have enough gold to justify going to it. We're going to know which elite fight we're bad at, like which is the most likely to tank our run, or we're going to know who the Act 2 boss is and what we need to use to be able to kill him. And so we're going to be able to spend the gold effectively to solve. Those are likely to be the last very, very dangerous challenges that we face in the run. How long did the Endless run go on? I played one for 2.5 hours yesterday and 5 hours the day before. Alright, so we're choosing a card again. We've got a Dagger Spray, Flying Knee, and a Slice. I may take Dagger Spray here for Slime Boss specifically. As I was saying with like Deadly Poison, it's hard to justify putting a ton of cards which are just sort of okay at dealing damage and only deal damage into our deck when we know that as the run goes on, we're going to have to get better and better at blocking, and currently we're not very good at blocking. However, for Lagavulin and for the Tri-Sentinel and Gremlin Up fights, we could use a little bit of extra damage. We've got a Fear Potion as well, so we're really good at killing Gremlin Up right now, and this helps a bit against Lagavulin, for what it's worth. Also, against Slime Boss, Slime Boss is definitely a fight where Dagger Spray is very, very good. So Dagger Spray is a decent pickup here. Dagger Spray is also very good against Gremlin Leader in Act 2. In fact, if you don't have at least a Dagger Spray in terms of AoE for the Gremlin Leader fight, you probably just die. So Dagger Spray is like a start on getting the Gremlin Leader fight worked out. Is the AoE Gremlin fight a big danger in Act 1? My experience with that fight, Melny, is that it deals me about 15 damage at worst if I am completely unprepared for it. So depending on how big a deal taking 15 damage in Act 1 is, compared to the chance of actually getting it, which is low, it's anywhere between like not really worth even considering, or, you know, if you've got the other stuff sorted out and you really care about your hit points, and you already have other reasons to put Dagger Spray in your deck, like all the things I was just saying, then sure, you could benefit from having a bit of AoE for it. Another thing, though, is that in this deck, Dagger Spray is not very good in that fight right now. Like, we are going to backstab Strike, one of the most vital enemies, on turn 1, and then say we draw Dagger Spray on turn 1, which might happen, or we're likely going to draw it on turn 2 or even 3. We're going to, like, half-kill all the other guys, and they're still going to attack us on turn 1. On turn 2, we're going to kill, like, 1 or 2 more guys, and block will take a little bit less damage because it will be a little bit easier to kill the second guy. But in general, like, Dagger Spray maybe reduces the damage we take from the fight on average by 1/3, I would guess, but it doesn't do that much in that specific fight, and that fight is very rare. Dagger Spray is better in the slime fight. The AoE slime fight where there are 5 slimes. They have lower hit points overall than the gremlins. Whew. Concentrate Terror and Dagger Throw. Terror is a card that I think people have valued less and less in Silent as they've played Silent more. People used to love Terror in Silent. In my stream, at least, people were always talking about taking Terror. Terror is problematic because so little of Silent's mid and late game damage is actually caring about Terror. So we already have bronze scales. This is already linear scaling damage for late game. We're going to look at Noxious Fumes or 1000 Cuts or Caltrops as pickups, which give us more scaling damage as the game goes on. We may end up doing something with Poison. I know we passed the Deadly Poison, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't end up doing something with Poison. And Terror doesn't apply to that either. There's only like one very efficient way of dealing damage with Terror in Silent, and that's like Flechettes / Skewer, which you can end up with, but in my experience it's like 1 in 10 runs or something you end up trying to do flechettes and skewer. What's the equity percentage? I don't think it's really changed. I don't think anything much has changed. It might actually have gone down a bit, because I think the last 2 floors have not been particularly advantageous for us. I'll say 81. But I don't think it's changed much. These have been mostly inconsequential floors. We haven't taken much damage. We haven't gotten great cards. The weak potion's nice. So yeah, for all those reasons, Terror is just not great. Concentrate becomes a good card if we have a lot of like X cards and maybe a well-laid plans. We can dump a lot of energy into those cards. If our deck needs to dump more energy into them than it already could without Concentrate, it becomes a good card. This is like one deck in 20 or 25 that ends up really wanting to Concentrate, in my opinion. Oh, what is the equity percentage? I see. That's our chance of winning the run, in my opinion, right now. That's where all of the decisions come back to. What does Vulnerable do? It increases our attack damage against an enemy by 50%, rounded down. So Dagger Throw is fine. Dagger Throw is another damage-only card. It's significantly better than Deadly Poison because it draws a card. So if we're on a turn where we don't draw enough block, this is at least drawing us a card, and in that situation, like, the discarded card doesn't matter. We're going to discard one of the attacks that we didn't want to play this turn anyway, and, you know, hopefully we've drawn a defensive card. So I'm going to grab the Dagger Throw. It's just sort of a bloat common that helps our deck a little bit in these Act 1 fights. We're looking at increasing the chance that we can go the entirety of Act 1 without resting, which is ambitious, but possible. I don't think it makes a huge difference to anything, but it's nice. We have 2 campfires here, and we're going to get upgrades at both of them almost for sure. And our upgrades right now are not that exciting. Backstab gives us an extra 4 damage in every fight. We're always going to play that, basically. It actually gives us an extra 6 damage because of Fear Potion, but I mean, it's basically the same upgrade as Dagger Spray, which gives us slightly more damage against Tri-Sentinels, well, much more damage against Tri-Sentinels, and probably slightly more damage against Lagavulin because we play it more than once. Against Gremlin Knob, it's more or less the same, just a little bit more damage, I guess. We want to get the Backstab upgraded. Backstab upgrade's great for hallway fights. Dagger Spray upgrade's going to be great for the elite fights, and for the Act boss, and for the elite fights in Act 2, and it's just an okay upgrade. Alright, so we got a Gremlin Knob. We're actually very, very, very good at killing Gremlin Knob. We're gonna use our Vulnerable Potion here for sure. You could maybe argue for keeping it for Slime Boss, but I think that, I think we do okay against Slime Boss with Dagger Throw and the like. Shouldn't be necessary. Looks like we get to keep our Weak Potion because we do Neutralize on the right turn. Against Gremlin Knob, we have to work out how long a fight's going to last to work out whether or not we should be blocking. This fight, we can actually be pretty sure is going to last either 1 or 2 more turns. He's going to go to 23 when he attacks into our Thorns, and Dagger Spray is going to deal 18 to him by itself. So if we draw any attack and the extra 2 cards that we're drawing, that will kill. Which is very likely. So probably the site has 1 turn left. Like, probably we're not getting attacked again, so I'm just gonna play both blocks. Even if this fight goes for 2 turns, playing both blocks was still better on average. And we've killed Gremlin Knob, taking like 3 damage. Cool. Welcome to Backstab. I don't think any of this is great. My equity might have just gone down. So the boot's not a very good relic. Just doesn't really do anything. The gold is cool. Alright, we got a Leg Sleep. Leg Sleep's nice. And we got an easy Act 1 elite fight. So I don't think this makes a huge difference to how we do in like Act 2. which is the thing I care about largely. But it was a good elite fight for us. It makes us considerably more likely to get through Act 1 with upgrades. I'm going to say that we're up to 84% equity from that. Though I think we should teach Slay the Spire at schools. I think we should teach decision making in schools. Boot Tier 1 Relic S+. Indeed. Doesn't the block only make you take more damage if it goes for 3+ more turns? It's a little bit complicated, Menzel, because if you're... Okay, it gives him 2 strength, right? So if he's weakened, that means less for him. If you're vulnerable, it means more for him. So it depends on if he's weakened and you're vulnerable, exactly when you should be playing defense versus not playing defense. But in general, I think rule of thumb is that if he attacks you another 3 times after the time that you're blocking for, in general-ish, that's when you start taking more damage than you blocked. Yeah. Not true if you're vulnerable. And that fight is really bad if you get vulnerable, which we didn't. Your debate teacher was bronze in league and vaped in class. I'm sorry, Sparky. I was a diamond league player. Would have been a much better debate teacher. So we're definitely taking leg sweep here. I'm not sure how much explaining I need to do for this card. I guess I'll try to explain it. I guess maybe it's not that obvious why leg sweep's an incredibly good card, because it only blocks for 12 for 2 energy, which is like not that much better than blocking for 5 for 1 energy. Although when you're frail, this blocks for 3 for 1 energy, and leg sweep blocks for 9 for 2 energy, which is significantly better because of how rounding works. And it applies weak, but like we can already apply weak with neutralize, sort of, so maybe that's not seeming that exciting. Being able to apply weak to a single enemy constantly is very valuable, and sometimes neutralizes at the bottom of our deck, so leg sweep increases the chances that we can get him weakened on turn 1. And solidifies the chance that we'll have him weak on every turn for the remainder of the fight. Leg Sweep's also a card that blocks for a lot and only requires 1 card drawn, so it reduces significantly the chance that we're going to have a turn where we can't block for. Can't block much at all. So let's say we have a turn where we draw 4 strikes and 1 block card. If we draw Defend and we need to block, we're sort of shit out of luck. But if we draw a Leg Sweep in that hand, we are doing very well. We're not only gaining 12 block, but we're also applying 2 weak. Leg Sweep is so strong here that there's very little reason to consider the other cards, but for what it's worth, I would not have put either of these other cards in the deck right now. I would have just skipped over either of those. For all the reasons I've been saying recently about like cards which only deal damage and how we just don't want that many of those. How long have I not played League for now? Like 5 years or something. It's been a while. Wouldn't it be dangerous to teach decision-making if the school twists the correct decision into political or religious views? Well, I think that, if you teach decision-making right, like one of the reasons that decision-making is important is that you establish why something doesn't boil down to being about political or religious views. Like, you're not teaching someone, if you're in this situation, you should do that. In which case, yeah, what you're saying might come from, like, if you're, I don't know, how can I possibly say something that isn't offensive to somebody when I'm talking about a religious or political view decision? But yeah, like, if you're in this situation, you should do what this religious group says you should do. Might be one way that decision-making classes suggested things, which is, you know, perhaps problematic if you're a student who isn't subscribing to that religious view of the world. But decision-making is more like, you know, we read a bunch of psychological studies or something. We find out that happiness is part of this, and we read all of the information that you need to know about this game. And it's more about game theory and understanding how to create frameworks to make decisions in, and identifying which things are important to think about in those frameworks. Isn't decision-making a religion of its own? Maybe. I don't know. So I'm just going to upgrade the Backstab. Backstab's a great upgrade to just make sure that we don't take any damage in hallway fights ever, basically. It doesn't do that. We'll still take damage in hallway fights, but it gets us 4 damage extra into our deck, and we always draw it on turn 1, which is going to become more and more relevant as the run goes on and our deck gets larger and larger, having an extra upgraded card in our hand on turn 1. Got a Regal Pillow, which doesn't do that much. It's a sustained relic. It'll be relevant in Act 2, quite likely. We'll take some damage in Act 2 hallway fights at the start of the act, or take damage from an Act 2 elite and get a good rest in. But it's not like an incredible relic. I'm going to say that our equity is about the same. Our equity is just... I'm not calculating that at all, Electro Bolt. I'm just... that's what all of the decision-making comes back to, making that number go higher or lower. And so I want to represent that it exists on the screen for viewers to make sure that, you know, people realize that that's what we care about. Interesting how I'm approaching this. You think the issue you run into is you're thinking of top-down deck archetypes early on instead of just surviving to the next floor. There's equity is your chance to win, Gedonker. Super simple. You can either win or lose, so equity is just your chance to win. There's a really, really instructive comment, in my opinion, that a guest on my Magic the Gathering podcast made probably 10 years ago or something, 11, 12 years ago. He was talking with Cedric Phillips, who now does coverage for... I believe he does coverage for Wizards of the Coast tournaments. Cedric, right? He did Star City Games coverage for a while. I believe he's gotten hired by Wizards to do Wizards coverage. He was talking about... Cedric was talking about how he took Kithkin to a tournament. Kithkin are like a white aggro deck. They just use small creatures to attack and kill the opponent. And he was just saying, you know, I know this deck in and out. I played it a lot before. I know that I won't make mistakes while piloting it. I know the strengths and weaknesses. So because of that, I decided to play this deck for the tournament. And Bing, who was our guest, said, oh, he's still SCG, but they do GPs now. Gotcha. Bing said... So you decided to take every mistake that you made for the entire tournament and compact it into deck choice. Which I absolutely loved. Like, the implication being, like, that wasn't the right deck decision. There was a better deck to pick. You just, you know, decided to make the wrong choice to simplify things for yourself so you didn't have to think or whatever. I think that playing Slay the Spire and thinking about building an archetype is a lot like that. If you go into a run thinking, I'm going to build a strength deck with Ironclad or something like that, you're doing something that you know how to do, but it's the wrong thing to be trying to do. And so you might not make as many decisions as you try to do it. You may not make as many mistakes as you try to make decisions trying to do it, but you're trying to do the wrong thing anyway. You made the mistake at the start when you decided to do the wrong thing. We have to decide whether we're going to an event or 2 fights. I think we might be in such good shape that we can go to 2 fights here, which is unusual. Honestly, if I was on autopilot, I would just always go to the event in this situation. The event gives us a chance to get a card removed. It could be a relic. It can just be a fight as well. It's difficult to evaluate exactly how good an event is versus a hallway fight. You have to go look up what the numbers are on, like, what it can be and what the chances are of different things. The shrines are really good, the ones that, like, let you remove a card or whatever. They're also actually less common than the other sorts of events. There's, like, the matching game where you may actually put a curse in your deck. There's the spin the wheel where you can get damage or put a curse in your deck. You know, on average, it's going to be a floor which improves your deck, but there are definitely downsides, or we can just go to a fight. I'm actually just going to go to a fight. We've got this gold number, 130. I'd like to get that up to like 300 by a store if possible. That's going to be difficult. So I think there are reasons to do that. Have to work out if we're taking 1 damage here or not. We can play a defend, or we can play a strike. So inside a fight, generally you get to stop thinking about equity and just think about how to leave the fight with the most health. It's not entirely true. Let me demonstrate why it's not entirely true. Let's say that I'm going to construct a situation which is bullshit to demonstrate. The situation's bad, but I just want to demonstrate why it's not entirely true. Let's say that I'm going to rest on the next floor, and I know for sure that I'm going to rest on the next floor. This actually isn't that bullshit a situation. We'll say that we're in a fight on the 48th floor, and we know the next floor is a campfire, and we know the floor after that is the boss. We don't have an upgrade that we care about, really. We're on 5 less than our max HP, and we can rest for 30, and we know all of this information. In that situation, we take absolutely no equity loss for taking damage all the way up to where we start taking 25 damage. And once we take 25 damage, then our equity starts to go down from the fight. So like 25. This is how much damage we've taken. And so in that situation, when I'm piloting the fight, I don't actually have to try to work out how to take like 4 damage instead of 5 damage in the fight, because they're identical. What I need to work out is how to minimize the chance of getting this much damage dealt to me, because that's where my equity actually goes down. And so in that situation, I would super clearly strike here and not defend, because strike is going to end the fight, and there's no way that the fight could end with us taking like more than however much damage. We're back to hypotheticals again. In this situation, I think that there's very little chance that we're going to take damage if we just defend. An event is basically 0.83221 of a campfire. Incredible. I think there's a lot of value in taking comfort picks to tournaments. You'd happily give it 2% equity to have a deck that you know you won't mess up. Well, you're not giving up equity in that situation. What you're saying is that you're gaining equity by having a deck that you won't mess up, because, you know, you were losing equity for the chance of messing things up before, which is fine. Alright, one thing that our deck does not have right now is good scaling damage against, like, Act 2 boss and against specifically the Slavers fight. We've got okay linear scaling against Gremlin Leader and Book of Stabbing with Bronze Scales, and we also have Dagger Spray to deal with Gremlin Leader. And Slime Boss, for that matter. We can't quite deal with the Act 2 boss yet, and we can't quite deal with... No, Slavers are fine. We can't quite deal with Act 3 yet. We could put Finisher in the deck to try to get better at dealing with Act 2 stuff. Finisher's a weird sort of scaling. Finisher's a card which is very good in Act 1, and then in Act 2 it can be very good. It's largely reliant on picking up a well-laid plans to make it particularly good, and Infinite Blades is nice, Cloak and Daggers are nice. These are all cards that we're already happy to put in the deck. Are we going to get to upgrade it? It's also a card that sort of has to be upgraded. Maybe we should take it so that we have an upgrade. Because otherwise we're not going to have an upgrade. The idea is to create a deck to cater toward goals in the upcoming acts rather than to build the deck to a theme. Yeah, exactly. You're building a deck that solves the problems that are coming the best, which could end up being lots of different things. Whew. So Finisher's okay against Slime Boss too, because against Slime Boss we want to be able to burst a bunch of damage halfway through the fight to get a good split, and Finisher... There's no card better at accidentally bursting a bunch of damage when you don't need to than Finisher is. Hey Egan, I'm going to show you as well. Thank you very much for the Twitch Prime sub. Much appreciate the support. Haven't been in chat for a while. You finally got your Twitch sub available. Thanks for what you do. Hey, you're welcome. Really glad you're enjoying it. Do I not like upgrading leg sleep? We could upgrade leg sleep. It's fine. It's not incredibly valuable to upgrade leg sleep, I don't think. Right now, we have enough weak in the deck, in my opinion. Also, the third weak is less valuable than the second weak because often the fight ends. Like if you apply 2 weak on turn 3 and the fight ends on turn 4, then both of your weak was relevant. But if you apply 3 weak, then the third weak didn't actually do anything. And that describes a lot of fights right now. The third week just doesn't actually have relevance to us at the moment. It's like Leg Sleep's an okay upgrade, but it's not great. My issue with Finisher is that we have like too many crappy attacks in our deck. So one of the biggest threats to our run right now, one of the biggest reasons that we will lose, and something that we should, like it's significant enough to be modifying everything about how we play right now in my opinion, is we may just not find scaling damage in time to beat the Act 2 boss. And we'll die if that happens. Taking Finisher here, I don't think Finisher is like the greatest card in the world in this situation, but it's okay. It's largely about making us a little bit more resilient to situations where we don't find more good scaling damage. Like it makes well-laid plans a card which gives us scaling damage, sort of. Makes well-laid plans a card that is a bit of an out in that situation. It makes Cloak and Daggers deal a lot more damage on average. Take Finisher. You can upgrade it too. Is it worth buying this game at the moment? Yes, definitely. You'll get hundreds of hours out of it if you like Hearthstone, probably. Okay, so we're fighting the slime. There isn't too much to say about this fight. It went incredibly well. All of the decisions were sort of made for us by our draws. Blade Dance prepared and Dagger Spray. It is 100% free to play. Yeah, it's a roguelike, so you start on the first floor with a very basic deck and go up to the 50th floor, adding to your deck. There are a few things that are on, like, they have to be unlocked. You can save file edit to unlock stuff if you really don't want to unlock things, but like you'll be able to unlock everything in 15 hours, maybe. Well, not Ascension 15, I guess. There's also a difficulty grind where you get up to a max difficulty. There's probably 100 hours plus of unlocking, depending on how good you are, because you have to win to unlock Ascension levels. Okay, so the only thing I was going to talk about with this card choice was why I'm not taking Blade Dance, and I'm not taking Blade Dance because it doesn't block, and it's just not that likely that we draw it in the same hand as Finisher. And the only reason it would be particularly good in this deck right now would be if we drew it in the same hand as Finisher. So, like, yeah, it's an okay damage card, but unless we draw it in the same hand as Finisher, it's just not that great. Greeting Finisher. Okay, and we got the other easy Act 1 elite fight for us. I think Lagavulin deals significantly more damage to us than Gremlin Knob or these guys deal. In this fight, you're basically always trying to... okay, so the sentries are on alternating attack patterns, so they daze and then attack and then daze and then attack. And so these guys are lining up, which means that we take 18 damage in a turn from them. And that's like the danger when it overloads our block like that, because we're going to take some damage. Otherwise, probably we're going to block for at least half of the damage incoming every turn, and even if we don't, we're only taking 9. So this fight's almost always just about killing that guy, like the lowest HP outer guy, as quickly as possible. That is exactly as random, but usually you just want to do that, and certainly in this situation, that was the case as well. We can decide to take 9 damage here. No, take 4 damage here. Look, we're definitely doing this. We can now decide to take 4 extra damage to deal 16 to the middle sentry. And that's like thinking. We've now reached a point where we're thinking about a lot of stuff. Did I say 100 hours to unlock where I am now? Maybe. I don't actually know for sure. Like 15 hours probably to unlock all the cards for the classes. If you're good at a game like this, you get more experience if you win the run. And you have to like win 5 runs. It's probably more like 20, 25. But then unlocking Ascension 15 on every character that requires winning 15 runs with each person, and the runs get harder and harder. So that's gonna take, that's probably 200 hours at least, actually. I'm just drinking a soda. Is it fun unlocking it all? I enjoyed unlocking it all. Yeah, champagne. So, yeah, we have to think about all sorts of stuff here. One thing is, so blocking is the higher variance play. We take 4 here, so we might draw well and not take any more damage in the fight. Well, no, that's actually impossible. We're definitely taking more damage next turn. But we might only take 8 damage in the fight if we block and take some damage, and then next turn we kill that guy, and the turn after we kill this guy. Could get away from the fight only having taken 8 damage. More likely we're going to take like 12 damage in that situation or something around there, I would say. So I think that if we... Let's go back to the drawing. This is obviously very inaccurate, and I'm just trying to display how I'm thinking. So this is 4 damage, 8 damage, like 12 damage. I feel like if we block here, like, yes, sometimes we take 4 damage, sure, but much... Okay, no, we never take 4 damage. Sorry. Sometimes we take 8 damage, like it's a little bit more likely we take 12 damage, and then I don't think we'll take more than that very often. So maybe the amount of damage we're looking at is something like this. If we don't block, obviously the least we can take is 9, but I actually think it's fairly likely that we take 9. And other than that, we take like 13. So I'm comparing like these two distributions of damage, and honestly they're very similar. There's not much reason to care about one over the other. Depending on how I drew the line exactly, one might be like better on average. There's not that much reason to care about being on 46 versus 47. So I'm just going to make a decision. Like at some point, you just make a decision. At some point, we just admit that I'm not going to make that decision perfectly. It's probably a decision which has like less than 1/10 of a percentage of equity built into it. Like it just does not matter very much at all for the purposes of the run. Yeah, okay. So we killed the guy. Sorry, I left paint up on the stream. And we even get a pantograph, so it turns out that the health doesn't even matter in the slightest. We're gonna end up in the same place anyway. Dodge and roll, cloak and dagger, and backflip. These are actually all... I think all 3 of these are in the top 5 silent commons. These might be the top 5, the top 3, sorry, silent commons. Are they? I think they are. Dodge and roll, cloak and dagger, backflip. Probably. So... we can try to talk about why these cards are so good, I guess. Dodge and roll is very good because silent gets dexterity and dodge and roll applies dexterity twice. First off, it's blocking for 8 for 1 energy and 1 card, which is very good. That's a good enough block ratio to like survive the Act 3 boss, usually. Like even if you have an unupgraded dodge and roll and you just play them with 4 energy, You'll want to be able to deal damage somehow, and that's going to be difficult, but like 8 block for 1 energy is good. That's great. You'd ideally want to be more like 10 per 1 energy, probably, but 8's pretty good. Yeah, and then if you like get 1 dexterity, all of a sudden, instead of going up by 1 block on this card, you're going up by 2. And Silent gets dexterity, so this card sort of snowballs out of control in terms of how much mitigation it can create. It's not as great early on. It also smooths out variance, I guess, and you can do creative things with it. God, there's so many things that are good about this card. There are fights where you don't get attacked on 1 turn, then get attacked for a lot on the next turn. If you play dodge and roll the turn before, you get attacked for a lot, and then a bunch of block the turn where you do get attacked as well. You'll get more block out of it because you dodge and rolled. It smooths out variance in general. It means that you're getting some block this turn and some block next turn, which reduces the chance you get no block at all on a certain turn, which is nice for hallway fights, which are not, super threatening, but you might take a little bit of chip damage. Dodge and roll just makes you take a little bit less chip damage. There are lots of reasons that dodge and roll is a great card. Okay. Backflips, a very good card because it draws 2 cards. Backflip's not as great a card early on in the game because card draw is less relevant early in the game. So right now, I don't really run out of cards in my hand. I only have 3 energy. Most of the cards in the deck cost 1 energy. So I draw 5 cards. That's 5 energy worth of cards to play. I have 3 energy. I generally end the turn with 2 cards still in my hand. As we get up to 4 energy and add more cards that cost 0, or add stronger cards that we want to draw towards to play instead of a defend or a strike, being able to draw more cards is more relevant. So if I have like a deflect in my deck, which is a 0 energy cost block, then drawing 2 cards may draw that deflect and get me extra block on that turn. It's already true that this happens for neutralize. We might draw neutralize and get the neutralize played on the turn. Also though, we're at a point now where we've added like a Dagger Spray plus. And so if I draw 2 cards and I draw Dagger Spray plus and I get to play that instead of a strike, that's immensely valuable. And that value goes up and up as the run goes on because you have... right now we're like 2/3 crappy cards and 1/3 good cards. As we get toward the second half of the run, we're going to get toward a point where we likely don't want to ever play our basic cards at all. And card draw is going to let us play the better cards. But we take Cloak and Dagger because it's insanely strong. It blocks and deals damage and is good with finisher, and it's an excellent upgrade, and there are just so many reasons to take Cloak and Dagger. I'm sure the Cloak and Dagger will come up. I'm gonna nudge my equity up, feeling okay. I'm not gonna put it super high because I think there's still a decent chance that we die to the Act 2 boss with no scaling, but we're doing pretty well. Oh my god, Boot just killed that louse. Thanks, Boot. We have to decide between Ancient Potion, Vulnerable Potion, and Weak Potion here. Weak Potion and Vulnerable Potion is the ideal for fighting Slime Boss. But we have we have 66 health for the Slime Boss fight, so who gives a fuck? Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. We have 2 sources of weak, so the Weak Potion is considerably less valuable. In most fights, we just weaken the guy we care about anyway. Correct level. I started equity at about 75%. Yeah, Laertes. The game is amazing. Spam cans Camplin. Yeah, we're going to take Ancient Pot over Weak Pot, because we already can do the things that Weak Pot does. We don't care much about it in the slime fight, because we have so much health going into the slime fight. Ancient Potion's very good against, going back to our like threats list here, hallway fights with Chosen. This Hex that the Chosen puts on us is quite dangerous. It's something that we can survive okay if we get like a well-laid plans, or enough card draw, or enough front-loaded damage. We haven't done any of these 3 things, so the Hex is very, very dangerous. We can now artifact the Hex and it won't do anything to us. It's good in some messy 2-enemy fights as well. Other than that, the Artifact Potion doesn't have that much value. But it's so good in those two situations that we're going to grab it. See the card first and decide on the potion later. That was probably a better idea, yeah. Although I think I'm always making that potion decision. I should have looked at the card as well. We're not taking any of these cards. They're all just bad. Just bad. Just bad. Alright. We're going to upgrade the Cloak and Dagger for the extra 5 damage, because Boot makes our shivs deal 5 instead of 4, and also for the synergy with Finisher. Attacking once more in a turn makes Finisher deal another 8 damage that turn. Let's fight a Slime Boss. There's super rare cards you can get that are kind of OP. There's no rarity beyond... Can we split him? Hold on. There's no rarity beyond rare. So, rare cards show up 3% of regular fights and 9% of the time in elite fights. And you get a rare card option at every boss fight. I think there are like 12 to 15 rares or something total. So, usually you'll see 1 copy of a rare a run or something like that. But the runs end after like 50 floors. So it's not like you can meaningfully get out of control, because the run ends, like you win, and then you go back to the beginning again. Okay, I have to do math. So we have a vulnerable potion, so we have 22, 34, 43, plus Finisher, times 4, is 48. We have, I believe, 91 damage here, so we could split this turn at 51. Or we could just not use the vulnerable potion, save it for Act 2. Yeah, I think that's better. Just save the vulnerable potion for Act 2. It'll be good in a chosen fight as well. In which case we do 15, 25, 31, plus 36. Is how much? It's actually too much, right? Man. Do I not backstab? Maybe I don't backstab. 15, 25, 31. It's 32. So it's 63. Oh, that's fine. Most of the cards go back in the deck after we play them. There are some cards which exhaust, which are removed, but otherwise the cards go into our discard pile, and then once we've gone through our draw pile, we use the discard pile to create a new draw pile and draw from that next. Deal exactly 11 here, but then we have a pretty bad damage turn next turn. There's not really a reason not to just split here, I guess. It's a bad split, but... I might actually vulnerable potion. $18, 24, 33. Ends up being basically the same split that I had last turn if I vulnerable potioned. It's a better split than we're gonna get next turn. Wait. I probably couldn't give you a good argument for going over the guy who weakens you before the guy who frails you. This is the problem with putting Finisher in your deck incidentally. Oh. Man, we're getting murdered. Boot does well that turn. Does some extra damage. Actually, we should definitely go after the Frail first because the Weaken wasn't dealing as much to us because of Boot. It's funny. Silly Boot. That turn basically played itself. What does Equity do? That's just a description of how likely I think we are to win the run right now, which I'm updating as we go. Okay, so we can take a bunch of damage here. We heal 75% of the damage that we take in this fight before Act 2. But that doesn't mean that I want to take 18. I'm just like, we could get a better split by waiting. Dagger Spray is not in the deck. I think we just split now. Okay. Made it through the fight without dying, at least. Definitely happy to be at high health there. I have a die, bullet time, and Storm of Steel. Okay. I'm gonna run to the bathroom before I try to explain all of these. Avoiding slimes, getting into the deck would have been worthwhile because of finisher. Yeah, I was trying to save the vulnerable potion, but I don't think it was actually a doable thing. Alright. First thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to nudge our equity down. I think we're... So missing Afterimage, 1,000 cuts, and Adrenaline here is quite bad. And I've now made it all the way to Act 2 with no hope whatsoever of surviving an Act 2 boss fight. So I'll have to work that out at some point in Act 2. But I think, like, yeah, we're not doing that great right now. I think I win this run. Do I win this run 80% of the time from here? Yeah, I think I win this run 80% of the time from here. But not very happy with how things have been going super recently. Die, bullet time, and Storm of Steel. I go from the right to left. So Storm of Steel, discard your hand, add 1 Shiv to your hand for each card discarded. This is generally just a bad card. There's generally no reason to like this card. The reason that Storm of Steel would be good would it be if you had a ton of card draw in your deck and none of the cards you were drawing were worth playing, which is unusual. Or if you have like Dead Branch, Storm of Steel can be cool, but we don't have Dead Branch. Storm of Steel struggles to find a reason to be played. And yeah, this is certainly not a situation where there is one. Tough bandages, sure. It's not even that good with tough bandages though. Usually how your turn looks is you like play some cards, and if you have 2 energy left in Storm of Steel, there's only like 1 or 2 other cards in your hand. You have to be drawing a bunch of cards for very little reason. Am I saving equity guesses to analyze later? Well, there isn't really any analysis to do after the fact. In fact, it's harder to analyze my equity after the fact than it is in the moment, because in the moment I know the factors that I care about, and like my impressions of the run are not polluted by what happened in the future. Analyzing things post fact requires like you have to like sort of go cross-eyed and try your best to forget what the results of your actions were, because I can't. The results of these actions are, if I make a play that's very good against one of the bosses and very bad against the other boss, and I get the other boss that's very bad against and I lose, like, it's very hard for me to rationally, in an unbiased way, look back at the run and say whether or not that was correct or not, because I just got unlucky, basically. It's easier to do it in the moment. Bullet time. Cannot draw any cards this turn. Reduce the cost of cards in your hand to 0 this turn. Bullet time's another card which is good if we, like, get another energy and some card draw. It's good there. It's sort of okay there. A silent, in general, there's one sort of way you can play silent which cares a lot about having large output on one turn and less output on another turn, and bullet time sort of works in that sort of package of synergies. Cards like Doppelganger, Finisher, which we have, Phantasmal Killer, Skewer. These are generally cards which can add together to try to make one really big turn rather than lots of individual moderately sized turns. Bullet time can sort of work there. It's a lot easier to solve your dealing lots of damage problem by just putting a Noxious Fumes in your deck, usually, than it is to try to put that together. And I don't think there's much reason to put bullet time in our deck to try to aim for that right now. It's just, it's too far away, being able to put together that package of cards to beat an Act 2 boss with. One thing that bullet time is very, very good with is Snecko Eye, because Snecko Eye draws us extra cards every turn and it randomizes their costs. So we're going to get a 7-card hand every turn, and a bunch of the cards will cost like 3 in it, and bullet time makes all of the cards in your hand cost 0. I think we could probably already take Snecko Eye without the bullet time, and it would be fine. It's like very unlikely to see Snecko Eye. They've added more boss relics, so it's a smaller amount of the boss relic pool now. So I don't think that's a good enough argument to take bullet time either. Hey, the Albion. Petrarca can also set up big turns. Yep. Hey, Adela class. Hope you're doing well. Die deals 13 damage to all enemies and exhausts. And there are 2 things I like about this card. One, it deals 13 damage to all enemies, which is great. That's actually a very, very, very valuable way to front-load damage in Act 2. There are a lot of fights in Act 2 where you want to deal damage to lots of enemies at once. Gremlin Leader, Slavers are both fights where dealing a lot of damage for a good cost to lots of enemies is very valuable. It's pretty good in Act 3, too. It's just a good way to front-load damage. And 2, the fact that this card exhausts is a nice benefit, because the second time through the deck, it's not in your way. At that point, the second time through the deck, if we're going to win this run, probably the second time through our deck will have deployed powers, which are dealing scaling and incremental damage for us, and we don't want to be spending time playing something that just deals damage once. We probably want to be blocking so that those powers can win the run for us. So exhausting itself is a nice benefit that Die has. I'm gonna grab it. I think with Die, Dagger Spray plus Backstab plus, I think we're at a point where we can handle all 3 Act 2 elites, which is good because we don't have the ability to kill an Act 2 boss yet, which means we want to fight Act 2 elites to try to get stronger somehow. The meetup was really good, Tijol. It was a lot of fun. It's really cool to meet people. Oh yeah. And we've whiffed on relics. So, I mean, we didn't whiff on relics, but these are not great relics. Philosopher's Stone, I think, is what I'm going to end up taking. Astrolabe to transform 3 cards and upgrade them is a nice relic. It's better if we already have a way to deal scaling damage in our deck, because it's not that likely that we transform into a scaling damage solution with Astrolabe. And largely what this does is it makes our strikes get out of the way of our scaling damage. But we don't have scaling damage. We're still reliant on front-loaded damage somewhat. So strikes aren't actually that bad right now. And yeah, like we're not going to hit that many cards which are solving all of our problems for us. If I had a Noxious Fumes in the deck, Astrolabe would go up in value. Without something like that in the deck, Astrolabe goes a little bit down in value, I think. Tiny House, upon pickup, obtain 1 potion, gain 30 gold, raise your max HP by 5, obtain 1 card, upgrade 1 random card. This is like a fine relic. I'd certainly take it over skipping, right? But it's not a relic that like makes a deck that's got problems win the run. It's a relic that it's a relic that, you know, takes you from 95% equity to 96% equity. It shores things up a teensy weensy bit. It's not great. We take Philosopher's Stone here for, well, 1, getting energy at the start of each turn is very, very valuable. We have a finisher in our deck, which cares about being able to play lots of cards. We do have the leg sweep, which costs 2 energy, so we should be able to use 4 energy very effectively. So that's 1. 2, all enemies starting with 2 strength is less relevant for our deck than it is for other decks which have more scaling damage in place, because our deck cares more about front-loaded damage, and so enemies aren't going to be attacking us as much. We're going to kill them before they've attacked as many times. We can also weaken enemies, basically always, with a leg sweep and a neutralize. So that also diminishes the effect of their 2 strength slightly. Yeah. This relic choice decreased our equity, like, significantly. I think we're like 68% chance to win or something. I think we're still favored, but not that favored. The boss relic, basically the boss relic, the boss relic choice and whiffing on a reasonable energy relic is immensely problematic. We're fighting the champ, who is quite difficult to kill at the best of times and not somebody that we really want to be giving 2 strength to, unfortunately. This keeps getting worse. Alright, so the champ existing drops our equity to like... maybe 53. We're gonna go 53. I think 48. Equity plummeting. Can that be true? Yeah, I think that can be true. We were much happier to see Collector or Bronze Automaton there. This is the first point where I felt like I'm less than a favorite to win the run. So, yeah. Not great. This part of the game can be somewhat dissatisfying. Like, I played a bunch of floors which had very little influence on how likely I thought I was to win the run, and then I just whiffed entirely on boss rewards and got a bad Act 2 map, and now, now I'm, like, not doing well at all of a sudden. We do have 290 gold, though. And there are lots of ways that we can come up with solutions to beat the champ. There are relics we can hit, which do it for us, something like a kunai or a shuriken. Well-laid plans is possibly enough in conjunction with like a footwork or 2 and a malaise. We'll see. We'll see. We maybe... if I see a catalyst, I might take it. I'm not sure. We don't have any poison right now. Anyway, we're going to go to the store with our 290 gold and see if we can maybe work something out. I expect us to take a decent amount of damage in fights right now, so I don't want to go to hallway fights, which means we're going to take the path with 2 events. Act 2 hallway fights are not something that we've solved fully. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Super easy for Defect to kill the champ with a Dark Orb. Yeah, that is true. I want to let one of these kill itself, ideally. Just knock the other one out of the sky. Unfortunately, Philostone makes the birds, you know, significantly worse. So we can take 3 and end the fight here, or we can... No, we want that guy on the ground for sure. No reason to take 3 more damage there. Okay, so the bird fight went okay. Piercing Whale, Masterful Stab, Poison Stab. Piercing Whale... Oh, no. Piercing Whale is better than Dodge and Roll, right? Piercing Whale's the 3rd best silent common, I believe. Probably. You're afraid of plant? Yeah, 8 times 3 guy. 8 times 3 guy... 8 times 3 man. 8 times 3 man is one of the enemies that I care about. So how do I feel about, like, this stuff? Let's see. In other fights, we probably take, like, 5 damage on average or so. Messy 2 enemy fights. I guess we take, like, 15. 8 times 3 man probably deals us 20. Because he's a 10 times 3. He probably deals us, like, 25, actually. Chosen Fight isn't as bad. Chosen Fight's, like... 15. But these fights deal us immense amounts of damage, is what I'm trying to convey. This is why we're trying to avoid them. Against Tri-Slavers, I suspect that we win taking about 25. Against Gremlin Leader, I think we might win. We'll probably take like 35 against Gremlin Leader. Against Book of Stabbing, I think we only take 20-ish. And Act 2 boss is currently Rip still. That's where I think the deck is right now. Taking huge amounts of damage from fights at the moment. Here's where Regal Pillow is going to shine. Yeah, we will likely be resting in this act. So, Piercing Whale, all enemies lose 6 strength for 1 turn. This doesn't only AoE block for you. Like, if you have 5 enemies, it makes all 5 of them lose strength for the turn. It also hits multi-attacks, and there are so many multi-attacks in Act 2. There's a ton of them. The Champ has a very, very, very relevant one. The Book of Stabbing has a relevant one. The Gremlin Leader has a relevant one. The 8 times 3 dude has a relevant one. So, Piercing Whale is an immensely good silent card because of how good it is in Act 2 fights, largely. It's like generally good in lots of places, but it's immensely good in Act 2 fights. Our equity just went up, like, substantially. 56. And we got a Piercing Whale. 57. I'm feeling much better. This is such a good event. We're getting 10 upgrades into our deck right now. And our deck doesn't have a lot of card draw. This is very common for a deck in Act 2. You don't have a ton of card draw and you have 4 energy, so you play the cards in your hand every turn, which means that these cards get played. So this upgrade is... It's probably something like +3 block and +3 damage a turn almost. It's like immensely, immensely good. We are spinning a wheel. And getting shivved. We lose 9 HP, which obviously hurts our chance to win. We've got significantly higher chance of just dying in the elite fight we're going to take. We're also like basically guaranteed to have to rest now. So, what do we got? Not that much. Not that much. So, a store like this, I think, is where thinking about equity becomes immensely important. We went into the store thinking that we had about a 50-50% chance to win. And so we probably shouldn't be tied to only like looking for purchases that are going to give us 100% chance to win, right? We should be willing to start making some suspect purchases that maybe pan out but maybe don't. We could go for another store, but it costs us an entire campfire. And we have a regal pillow, so like the campfire is pretty good. Panache is amazing. Panache isn't very good here. It costs 184 gold, and it doesn't beat the champ. Like, it's just not very good. We also don't play 5 cards every turn. It's something that we have to draw and put into play. There are a bunch of reasons why Panache is not very good here. If we wanted to get like AoE damage for playing lots of cards, we'd want a letter opener, but I don't think we can letter opener. So one way that we can try to beat the champ is we can go Oddly Smooth Stone and Caltrops. We can upgrade the Caltrops. Caltrops plus Bronze Scales is largely our damage for the second half of the fight, and we try to get lucky and block. We're going to have to be lucky with Piercing Wail and stuff. Yeah, we're going to have to be lucky with like Piercing Wail getting drawn on the right turn and drawing our blocks on the right turns and stuff. We're still not there by doing this. But I mean, Cloak and Dagger Caltrops, Oddly Smooth Stone. One thing that Cloak and Dagger Caltrops, Oddly Smooth Stone does is I think if we get a well-laid plans, we're favorites against the champ at that point. It gets us our damage, it helps us block for long enough to survive, and with a well-laid plans for Finisher and for Piercing Wail, I think we win the fight. So, is there any reason to use the Smoke Bomb Potion? You use it when you're going to die in a fight, or take so much damage in a fight that it's not worth the reward. Yeah, so I think that Cloak and Dagger Caltrops, Oddly Smooth Stone is the right buy, and I think there's a good reason for buying stuff here instead of going to the store. One, I think that this sets us up with a decent chance of beating the champ. It's not a great chance of beating the champ, but it is possible to beat the champ with this buy. And two, it gets us an entire extra campfire, right? I think I'm going to try to take these elites on. Because the hallway fights are really bad for us anyway. There's a decent chance that we go to this hallway fight, get the shit kicked out of us, go to this campfire, rest, elite, question mark, and from here, we die, basically. Options which are good in hallway fights are pretty compelling right now. As well. This stuff's good in a hallway fight. It's good enough. Our potion's good? Not really, but... Okay. I don't think that was like a great store for us. And some of our equity was tied up in the store being good. So I'm gonna... I think we're like 44% chance to win or so. Alright, got some thieves. So this guy attacks for more on turn 3, if he attacks on turn 3. So like in theory, if you can choose which one you're killing, you'd rather kill him. But I think that we can kill this guy this turn, right? Yeah. Should probably kill him this turn then. And I don't believe I'm using an energy potion for 4 health. This is a pretty good hallway fight for us to get. We're good at this particular hallway fight. Gain 3 thorns. We could try to dodge Chosen and go up the artifact pot. Is the energy pot actually better? It's good with finisher, especially on turn 1 maybe. The 3 thorns is good against Book of Stabbing, and maybe even more important, it's really good against the champ. I think we want that for the champ fight. It's going to be hard to get to the champ fight with it. I think we'll upgrade Caltrops here. Probably. I think we rest here. Elite, question mark, treasure, elite, hallway fight, rest, probably, elite, fight. Hopefully Pantograph gets us back to full, and we upgrade Caltrops. I think that's going to be the plan. So that means there are 2 hallway fights, possibly 3. They all have chances of having Chosen against Switch. The artifact potion's really good. I'm gonna try to dodge it. Oh, I should have looked here first. I've done that twice now. Riddle with Holes deals 25 for 2 energy. It's not like terrible, but Piercing Wail Plus is way too good. How highly would I rate Pantograph? It's like okay. It's not great, but it's slightly below average relic at worst. Problem is that you die in Act 2 a lot. And, like, it doesn't help you at all in Act 2, really. There are 2 ways, actually, that you die in Act 2. One is you die, like, here, in which case Pantograph is irrelevant. Another one is that you die to this guy without any ability to kill him, even if you're at max HP, in which case Pantograph often doesn't help very much either. I'm looking at upgrades. Sort of greedy. 23 health. I think that we need to upgrade probably Cloak and Dagger in this situation. Cloak and Dagger, yeah, I think Cloak and Dagger. I think that's just necessary. Okay. The equity is what I think our chances of winning the run from here. So Piercing Wail is being just incredibly strong this turn. That's what Piercing Wail does. Thank you, Piercing Wail. We can go ahead and block all damage, or we can deal an extra 9 here. I don't have a damage potion. We're taking 9 to 34, then fighting another elite at 34 health. I think Gremlin Leader kills us at 34 quite often, but Book of Stabbing should be okay. And then we're at like 5 to 10 there. Holy shit. My equity is too high. My equity is way too high. Alright. Why not write chance to win instead of equity so I don't have to answer this question every few minutes? Because equity is like the thing that you talk about in game theory. I'm trying to give you guys the tools to like think about things in terms of game theory, and equity is what you think about. Yeah, we could have energy potted there. Energy pot looks better this turn, though. Maybe we don't even have to energy pot here, in fact. I don't even think we need to energy pot here. Let's see, it's 16 damage to Front Slaver. How much do we expect to get from an energy pot? Probably not that much. Okay, that's fine. There's also a pretty good chance that we get a potion from this fight, right? Sorry, what? You don't understand how they haven't nerfed boot yet. It has dealt upwards of 10 damage this run alone. Sorry, what? Cloak and Dagger should deal more damage than Caltrops here. Also, get some more boot damage in for the fans at home. Okay, that fight went very well. Bag of Marbles is quite nice. Start of each combat, apply one vulnerable to all enemies. That helps us in hallway fights a decent amount. We have a Slice, Leg Sweeper, Flying Knee. Given our deck is starting to swell a little bit, we don't have quite enough weak in the deck to keep things weak constantly, and we want the champ weak constantly for sure, and we don't have a well-laid plans yet against the champ, which means we have to draw a weak applying card on the turn he executes, which is difficult. All of these things make Leg Sweep a pretty good pickup. That fight went well. We're gonna say like 35, but I don't know. That might still be high. The other thing is that that's the best elite fight for us by miles. Is it? Book of Stabbing isn't that bad. Yeah. We did get a hallway fight at the question mark, but on the bright side, it's not that bad a hallway fight. 18 plus... Ooh, we can use boot here, maybe. 13... Doesn't work, does it? Did I need to do that before Dagger Spray? Fuck! Shit. I think I just screwed this fight up. They're all 9s. No, we can. We go... 999 neutralized, we'll deal 5 thanks to boot, and then backstab. It's for 20. That was really nice. So this is the value of our front-loading damage. This is like just barely managing to scrape us through these fights without us taking too much damage in them. We've gotten good fights so far, for sure. There are much worse Act 2 fights than these ones. I'm gonna dash, Cloak and Dagger, or a backflip. This is a really difficult choice. Backflip is probably the card we want if we think that we can beat champ without hitting another helper. Backflip increases our chance of getting him weak on his execute turn, which is a very big deal. Backflip also helps us hit Piercing Wail. Oh, it helps us hit Piercing Wail on his execute turn, and it helps us hold Piercing Wails in the deck for the first half of the fight, where we don't want to play them. Oh, so there are lots of very, very compelling arguments for taking Backflip to help with this deck specifically beat the champ. Cloak and Dagger is obviously just a good card. It combos with Finisher in the ways that we've seen it combo with Finisher. And Dash is also a pretty good card. Dash is a better card earlier on in the game, and it gets significantly worse as the game goes forward, as you get more good cards to play instead. Like at the start of the game, Dash is doubling our block or strike output almost, and at this point our defends and strikes are upgraded. So we can just play a strike and a defend, and we almost get the full effect of Dash. You put equity at 5%, you don't see how I survive Philo Stone Champ. With double Piercing Wail and 3 sources a week and 9 thorns? 11 thorns? It's possible. We have lots of things we can hit still that make it easy, and it's actually possible with this deck right now, I think. I'm going to take Backflip. I'm going to leave equity around 35%. Prayer Wheel. Normal enemies drop an additional card reward. Not very relevant right now. I guess it makes the 2 normal fights that we're doing a little bit better for us. Okay, this is not the fight that we want. And we didn't get AoE on turn 1. Not good. Also, we got high HP gremlins on turn 1. So the gremlin leader has AI which cares a lot about how many gremlins he has right now. If we leave his gremlins alive, there's a good chance that he attacks next turn, and we are quite likely to hit a piercing whale next turn. But if we don't hit a piercing whale next turn, that decision is fairly likely to kill us. We get one of the easy elite fights there. So what's the chance of hitting a piercing whale? We have 2 piercing whales and 17 cards. It's gonna be 15, choose 5 out of 17, choose 5. It's 48%-ish. Did I do that upside down? Maybe it's 51%-ish. Either way, it's about a coin flip. The bonus of doing that is that the thorns do a little bit of extra work. We can leave these guys at low enough health that they're killable. It also lets us hit this guy while he's vulnerable. They're getting shields. But we'll have like a Dagger Spray or a Die. And we have Boot, actually. Boot's actually relevant there. I'm gonna go for that coin flip. Could be really bad. But it feels correct. Maybe we hedge and kill one of them. No. Maybe. Man, this is rough. Let's hit Piercing Whale next turn. He'll buff unless we kill them. We don't want him to buff again, I don't think. I'm gonna take a bit of damage this turn. Also, I think unfortunately we probably have to drink Thorn's Potion here. No, we can't drink Thorn's Potion here. Maybe we drink Thorn's Potion next turn, I don't know. Thank you. We didn't actually draw any damage, unfortunately. But that does buy us another turn. When he attacks instead of summoning or buffing, it's generally nice for us. I think I'll leave this guy alive still. This turn we could drink Thorn's Pot. Are we really trying to save that for champ? Holy shit. I'm gonna try to save it for champ. I think it's like borderline suicidal. But beating champ seems like it would be better than dying to champ. Okay, we've drawn both of the AoE cards. the turn before he summons, which is pretty awkward. He's buffing. That's bad too. I think we have to go for him at this point. We're not getting weakened. We're looking at 37 damage right there. That's half dead. We've got thorns. It's very unlikely that we draw Piercing Wail next turn, which we would need to do. I guess the other point of view is if we kill this guy, there's half a chance that he summons next turn, which gives us another turn to prepare before he kills us. If we hit Dagger Spray. If we don't kill this guy, he's 100% attacking us next turn. He's not currently weakened. I think we have to kill this guy. Kill both. We have to kill him before the wizard attacks us too. Or maybe we kill the wizard with AoE, I don't know. Okay. This attacks before he gives him a shield, sort of crucial. He's summoning. We get a semi-okay finisher turn. We also drew our fucking... Oh, we have to get lucky and draw damage next turn. We drew up Piercing Wail there. Ooh, he's buffing. Okay. That was definitely not something I am particularly eager to repeat. But we won that fight. Got an Ancient Tea Set, a Smoke Bomb for the hallway fight. It's actually really nice. Ancient Tea Set's not super relevant. And a Well-Laid Plans. Alright. Equity is now like... 60? I think? Maybe that's too high. It's like... back to 50 or so? Well-Laid Plans is an incredible reward because the champ only has like a couple of turns in the fight where we have to block, and Piercing Wail is very, very good against this attack on those turns. So grab the Well-Laid Plans for sure. It's the plant, dude. We don't have to run away right now, but we may Smoke Bomb next turn unless we draw a Piercing Wail. Which we did. We did draw Piercing Wail. Is the Smoke Bomb worth... Well, let's see. He's taking 9 from his attack. He's attacking us again next turn. We're taking 3 here. I think I'll hold on to the Smoke Bomb for the next hallway fight. Keep in mind we get 2 card rewards if we win this too from Prayer Wheel. These both deal 5. Doesn't do anything. But he dies in 2 attacks, which is not going to deal us damage because we have enough block. Okay. Another Caltrops. And another Piercing Wail. At some point you have too many copies of Caltrops, but I don't think we're there yet. Cool. I'll nudge that up. We're gonna go like 58% or so. Getting another Caltrops. Should be higher. The extra Caltrops. I think our problem was that he might execute us 3 times, and we can't block the 3rd. But now we have another Caltrops, so I don't think he survives that long. And we also have another Piercing Whale. I was gonna rest here, just to be super safe. Yeah, and then we upgrade one of the Caltrops before the boss fight. Okay, this is a very bad starting hand. I'm sorry, we have how many copies of Caltrops in our deck? Alright. Should draw a Piercing Whale next turn. Maybe, half the time. Largely we're letting this guy kill himself on our Thorns. So we would like to draw strike pluses, right? 27, 30, oh, he's just, no, 21, yay, he's dead. Perfect Book of Stabbing fight. We have another leg sleep, or a poison stab, or a burst. Burst doesn't really hit anything right now. Another leg sleep. Sure. That rust was bad. I really think that it was very possible for us to get obliterated in holy fights, but we just got very, very good holy fights for the entirety of Act 2. Maybe because of how analytical I'm being, I'm like not trusting in my front loading as much as I should be. Because we do have a lot of front loading. Goes up after modified hand. Not really. Not very much. I don't really expect to die in Act 3. And it doesn't do very much against the champ. Keep in mind that I was expecting to get a relic from that fight. So getting like an average relic does not increase our equity. Getting a foot certainly does. And deflect plus? Deck does not have many problems anymore. We're like more than 70% likely to win the run now. That should maybe even be higher. Getting a footwork is such a big deal. Alright. See how this champ fight does. Would I take Panache now? Would I pay 180 gold for it? Maybe. I'd certainly take it if it were offered to me, I think. I don't know. So well-laid plans ensures that we get to weaken plus Piercing Whale on his big attacks. It also may be able to hold the deflect for us in some weird situations. So I think we want a well-laid plans upgrade, not a Caltrops upgrade. And I regret resting earlier. Especially with the smoke bomb. I guess I would have rested there anyway, right? Because we'd be at 33 plus 25 is not actually full health. Alright. Gonna get our thorns up. There's our dagger throw, doing exactly what I said it would when we picked it forever ago. Although the fact that it discarded a card actually mattered. We ended up with 1 extra energy that turn. Let's make sure we keep him weakened. Hey, Quantum Jump, how you doing? Oh dear. Oh, that's a really bad turn. Oh, shit. He's vulnerable, he's weak. I think he's piercing well once. Definitely not using the piercing whale plus, though. I will actually shift our equity because of that turn to like 70%. That was a bad turn. How many percent fumes would be in this deck? I would love to have 2 fumes. I think fumes would push us up to like 95% or something. It would be hard to lose if we had noxious fumes as well as the other stuff we have. What does the boot relic do? It makes it so if you deal less than 5 unblocked damage to something, you instead deal 5 unblocked damage to it. Start holding this piercing whale and leg sweep. He's actually not going to be attacking us while we're vulnerable on the first execute, which is very lucky. We should win this fight from here. He also didn't buff his strength in the first half of the fight. I'm actually not going to piercing whale, I think. Well, why not piercing whale? He hasn't metallicized either. Yeah, okay. We can piercing whale. But we were like doing so well there that I actually think we could have gotten away without piercing whale. Just gonna get the damage in, take a little bit. That's fine. Now we're frail and vulnerable for the next execute. That's worse. We can't kill him before it. But he won't actually get all of the attacks off because he's going to die to thorns too quickly. Okay. Deck would suck so hard against 12 Metallicize. 12 Metallicize would have made the fight harder for sure, but keep in mind that his Metallicize does not block the Thorns damage. We have an Afterimage, Bullet Time, or Corpse Explosion. Our deck still struggles a
weensy amount to block consistently, so I think we take Afterimage. We have an issue that all of our like scaling damage is based on thorns. It's not really enough to kill Donu Deka very quickly at all, so we still need more damage. But I'm gonna say that we're about, let's see, we probably don't beat Giant Head either. I think we're about 70. Nah, we should be able to win this 80% of the time. It means 1 out of 5 times we die. I don't think we die that often. Should be able to beat this like 85% of the time. Maybe die 1 time out of 6. Definitely taking Afterimage there. The other options were shit, honestly. And Afterimage is one of the best rares. So, if you struggle to understand why Afterimage is really good, it's really good because it makes a lot of block. For 1 energy, you make a very, very large amount of block, which makes it a good card. We don't really want a Pandora's box when we've upgraded all of our strikes and defends. I don't think Snecko is good in this deck, but I mean, yeah, I don't really think that Snecko is good in this deck. What does the sub goal do? Staying above 500 subs helps me eat very significantly, so that's wonderful. At 550 subs, I was going to do a defect Overexplain run. Yeah, I mean, this is not actually... This might be a skip. Because the other option is Velvet Choker cannot play more than 6 cards per turn. We have 3 copies of Cloak and Dagger and an Afterimage now. It's not great. Thanks for the Twitch Prime sub into Regal. Agbomusho to you as well. Much appreciate the support. At 600 subs, I'm doing a Dr. Valen cosplay. Some people like that. The thing about the Dr. Valen cosplay is that's a draw to like people who have known me for a year or more, but that really doesn't get like new subs driven to the channel, guys. It's not a very good marketing scheme. I Casaplex. Aquamusho to you as well. Thanks for the Twitch Prime. Much appreciated. Glad you are enjoying the show. I think it's a skip too, Alanorn. Hey, Giola. For the 2,000 goals. Much appreciated. Hope everyone's been enjoying the World Cup. If you got a team in the game, or just enjoying as an observer, thanks for the 100 goals, Black Dove. Much appreciated. Thank you so much, guys. How hard could Pandora's Box screw us in this situation? The issue with Pandora's Box is that Defend is a good card. Defend Plus is a very good card in this deck with a footwork. Making 10 block for 1 energy with 4 energy in our deck, that's like good enough for all the Act 3 boss fights, basically. I'm gonna touch our equity down because we whiffed on Boss Relic again. There are quite a few fights where we lose unless we get a malaise. Against Awaken 1 and Time Eater, I think there can be ways that our deck develops where we have to hit a malaise to win the run. Yeah, Velvet Choker and Snecko both seem mediocre at best, so... Alright. It's been a good run. A good run to Overexplain. If I couldn't skip there, I think I would have taken Velvet Choker. It makes our Cloak and Daggers worse, it makes our finisher worse, but we do have reasons to use 5 energy in a turn sometimes. So I think the best way to get malaise is to go to 3 stores, and we can go to 3 stores. We also, I'm not convinced we can beat Giant Head. Not right now at least, maybe once we hit this store we'll get a relic that lets us, but until we can beat Giant Head we shouldn't be going to elite fights. We're fine against Nemesis, and the 2 Orb Walkers we can probably beat. Actually, I guess I've never like filled out the Act 3 threats. Act 3 kills me... Act 3 actually kills me about the same amount as the other acts, I think, but a lot of the time when I'm in Act 3, it's like impossible to die. This is an Act 3 where it's definitely possible to die. So like hallway fights in Act 3 are like borderline irrelevant. Like, we expect to take 5 damage in them. The exception is transient. Probably averaging 15 damage plus against the transient. We have a smoke bomb, so we can note that. That means we're a little bit less worried about them. Actually, we have a smoke bomb. Maybe that means we can go to elite fights and just try to hunt Nemesis. The 3 elites are the 2 orb walkers who currently hit us for like, I'm gonna guess 20? Maybe 15. I think, okay, here's the deal. This is a situation where the damage is very different depending on how long the fight goes. So we have some front-loaded damage in our deck. We've got the backstab, we've got a Dagger Spray upgraded, we've got strike pluses. We don't have that much of it, and there's a big moment in the Orbwalker fight where we kill the first guy, and if we get him, we can do the fight with, like, no damage almost. So, like, that happens sometimes. But there's, you know, a pretty good chance that we fail. And if we fail, we could take a lot of damage. So this is a situation where there's a big tail on how much damage we can take. We can easily have the fight go very, very poorly. That makes the Orbwalker fight a little bit more approachable with the smoke bomb, because we can see if it's going poorly and smoke bomb out of it. And if we get in this region, we're good. Like, that's worth a relic and the card pick and stuff. Average damage seems to not mean much with transient when the range is so wide. Yeah, but I think I've found that in my fights against transient, I take like 10 to 15 with a deck like this most of the time. And it's very rare that I take like 50, and pretty rare that I take 0 as well. I found that transient actually has somewhat consistent damage output against a deck like this. As a scientist, I find my graphs painful. I'm sorry. See, if we get that turn against the Orbwalkers, we're fine. That turn against the Orbwalkers was incredible. I guess another thing to consider is that we do have Prayer Wheel. So hallway fights are actually pretty good for us in terms of hunting melees. So maybe we go to another hallway fight instead of the question mark. Although Act 3 question marks are quite good, especially with the Mind Bloom event added. Looking at Blade Dance, Calculated Gamble Plus, and Crippling Cloud. We don't have much reason to care about Calculated Gamble Plus. Calculated Gamble Plus is better when we have lots of bad cards and lots of good cards, or when we want to draw towards certain cards. And neither of those things are really true. We have Caltrops we want to draw toward, but we're not that enamored with them against Awakened One, because they do give Awakened One extra strength. We can make Afterimage innate, and all of our basics are upgraded, so discarding them is not that important. What's my Ascension 15 winning percentage? I haven't looked, like, the last time I looked it was 75% over the last 60 runs, and since looking at that I went on a 15-0 streak, so it's pretty high right now. I'm just using graphs to demonstrate concepts, obviously. I'm not making graphs that I would expect somebody to be able to look at while I wasn't explaining them and understand. I think there's a difference. There are graphs which somebody can look at when you're not explaining and understand by reading them, and there are graphs which are going to be completely unintelligible unless the person's there telling you what's going on, and that's the sort of graph that I'm using right now. We could go Blade Dance with Finisher and Well-Laid Plans. It's not like the craziest thing ever. We can go Crippling Cloud, but we don't have any other poison, and we already have the ability to apply weak to lots of stuff. I don't think it helps us in any of the elite fights we care about. It's okay in one of the hallway fights. Against the slimes, I think Crippling Cloud is good here, but I don't think that's enough to make it worth picking up. So I think we skip. And our other choices, Skewer, Slice Plus, and Sneaky Strike, these are all just bad. Slice Plus is not as bad as the other ones. But yeah, they're all pretty bad. Crypt of the Old. I'm glad you are enjoying the show. Thanks for letting me know. It's a napkin graph, exactly. Okay. I think, okay, we definitely take more damage on average by going here, and I'd like to keep my options open by keeping my health high. If I get a card which lets me fight an elite here, I want to be able to go do that. And if I'm on like 45 instead of 55 health, I feel gross about it. So I'm going to go to the question mark instead of the hallway fight. I'm not spending 282 gold to buy the red mask. Thank you very much. Not when I'm about to walk into a store. This is a shit store. And I think we're just leaving. There are more stores, right? There's another store. We just go to the next store. We're looking for like malaise. We're looking for another footwork. We're looking for a noxious fumes. We're looking for a relic that makes a difference. And nothing in this store fits that description. We could buy a cloak and dagger here. We could buy a strength potion, actually. Wouldn't be that unreasonable. Infinite Blades is okay. Like, I don't know. The stuff's fine in here, but it's not very good. That's what I'm trying to say. Should teach you how to make the optimal meme deck next. I'm not sure that I know how to do that. I think that's you guys. We got the Madness event. So I guess we'll be taking a Writhe. Getting up to max HP is valuable. There's value in that. Yeah. And we'll probably just remove the Writhe at the store. Madness is just too slow to matter in a 33 card deck. It's just not going to... We also don't have enough card draw for it to matter, really. Like, we make something cost 0 and then it doesn't really actually help us play more cards per turn because we don't draw enough. Plus, what do we gain from playing like 6 cards in a turn? We've got good 4 turn output, 4 card per turn output. We've got enough block to block the Awakened one. I don't know, it just doesn't do anything. So. Is taking Madness ever good? Oh, we won. That's nice. If you're in a situation where... Sorry, I just have to, like... Okay. If you're... To adjust the equity real quick. Probably like 97% now. If you're in a situation where your deck takes off by playing cards... Okay, let's take it a step back even before I explain this. A lot of the time, a deck has a mitigation engine that survives on 4 energy per turn and some sort of scaling damage threat, which will kill the enemy. So, if you're able to do that, then madnessing stuff doesn't matter. It just doesn't do anything. If you're in a deck, though, that wins by trying to set up some sort of combo, I think Defect is the only class that can really do this with all for one, and doesn't have mitigation that lets you really survive to do that. I think Madness can sometimes be okay, but it's pretty difficult. So yeah, in the store we have 2 of the strongest relics in the game. Shuriken, every time we play 3 attacks in a single turn, we gain 1 strength. Kunai, every time we play 3 attacks in a single turn, we gain 1 dexterity. And we're pretty good at playing 3 attacks in a single turn. We've got 3 cloak and daggers, right? 2 cloak and daggers? We've got 2 cloak and daggers. So we're going to buy one of those relics and win. We have to decide on Shuriken versus Kunai. Kunai's only drawback is if you don't draw a block card, it doesn't really matter that you have a bunch of dexterity, but we have a Well-Laid Plans Plus, so we can guarantee that we always have a block card on the turns where we need it. Shuriken's drawback is it doesn't help us block, so if we were struggling to block, Shuriken would not get us the rest of the way. But I don't think we're struggling to block. I don't know. I don't actually know which one's better here. Shuriken seems like a... Does Kunai get us there against Giant Head? I'm gonna go Kunai. But I could see the argument for either. They're both obviously insanely strong. They basically do the same thing. The difference is like maybe 1% equity between the two. The ways that we die at this point, the reason we're not at 100% is we can die against the Awakened one if we get bad hands at the start of the fight and just get like obliterated and killed while we're playing powers and not drawing cards which block, or stack our dexterity with Kunai. I think we can also have pretty rough times in hallway and elite fights in theory, although we have a smoke bomb, so it's pretty difficult. The 3% of the time that I think we lose is mostly just getting really bad hands at the start of the Awakened one fight. I'm going to upgrade, I think Afterimage helps a lot in those hallway fight situations I was talking about. Yeah, I think Shuriken and Kunai are almost exactly the same. They're layer these. Like, abstractly, they both are cards. They both are relics that make us beat the Awakened one. And once you establish that they both do that, they're basically the same. I think Gambling Chip would make it 100%. Make it like 99 probably. Like, this thing being able to happen in hallway fights is still pretty bad. Although it probably only costs us a rest at worst, right? Let's actually use the skill potion here. Nice. Well-laid plans, beating the champ, getting Afterimage, getting Kunai are the really important things that have happened in this run. Unfortunately, this guy comes back. Wait, he doesn't? Because he died to thorns. Oh. I'm not sure I realized that it worked that way. We got another Cloak and Dagger. Incredible with Kunai. And a skip. None of these cards really help. But Cloak and Dagger is like this. I think that's actually a picture of Kunai. Probably. Works incredibly, incredibly well with Kunai. Let's upgrade it immediately. We have a Tori. Tori's not that relevant at this phase of the game, but sure, it's nice to have. I'm not actually sure that Afterimage is a good card on turn 1, because we have a bag of marbles, right? A little bit weird. It's 100% a Shiv and not a Kunai? I doubt that. I mean, yes, you're correct, but that does not service my narrative, so I'm going to dismiss your claim at this time. Pretty good. We've now reached the point of the run where there isn't that much to do. Like, this is an eternal problem with Act 3. Like, Act 2 was so good. There were giant swings in how well I thought we were doing based on picking up different cards and how different fights went exactly. There were individual turns where I was, you know, trying to painstakingly calculate odds of certain things happening because they were massively impactful to the run. And now we're in Act 3 and we have a kunai and, like, it just doesn't matter anymore. Like a backflip plus seems fine. Leg sweep plus, that's 4 leg sweeps. We get collector bonus on leg sweep. I don't think I've ever had that before. Leg sweep's not that good with kunai. Now a pretty bad card, actually. Because we have so much dexterity and we only get 1 application of our dexterity per energy when we cast a leg sweep. That's a leg sweep plus. As a collector bonus. I'm gonna take the collector bonus. Get another campfire. And I think I'll start upgrading copies of caltrops so we can actually end the fight. But I don't think that's important or anything. Maybe I should be thinking about like the best possible way to ensure that we win. I don't know. I'm gonna pitch our our smoke bomb by a dex potion. We'll use the poison potion to kill one of the ads at the start of the fight, maybe. I don't see any reason to go after an elite fight right now. There just isn't any benefit that we could gain from it. Down to 96% for mooming the collector bonus. Nah, I'm gonna go up to 98% for having another cloak and dagger. I'm not really sure exactly how likely I am to lose the awakening fight. It's a small enough number that I don't have a great grasp on whether it's like it happens 1% of the time or 4% of the time, you know? Don't think it happens often. I'm not playing these turns correctly anymore. I can, like, point to at least 3 mistakes I've made in the last few turns, but I've reached a point where I'm not really willing to play perfectly. We're just basically one. Another caltrops, a backflip, an outmaneuver, another backflip. Let's take 2 more backflips. I think getting that card draw to draw us cloak and daggers. And also draw us through the start of the fight. Both of these things are good. We'll give away our spirit poop writhe, I guess. Could get 10 extra HP from a die. Or we can give away writhe. Oh, we're back to like thinking about tiny corner cases and what we want to mitigate and what we want to play for. I think that given that I'm mostly concerned about dying very early if I draw very poorly, Writhe is a card in our starting hand which doesn't do anything. I think we should get rid of that. We get a spirit poop. It's unpleasant. That relic does nothing except -1 score. Will I do more overexplained runs? Yeah, in general, I will, Johnny Bazooka. The difficulty of dealing with probabilities near 1 is why you use log odds. Yeah, I'm okay with just saying that I think that probability is, you know. I mean, all of my probabilities have been like plus or minus 10% or something, right? I've never claimed that I'm doing exactly right. And this one is still like plus or minus some amount. There's some error involved in that. How enjoyable was this for me? This was very enjoyable. It does take a lot out of me. It's a lot of talking. Let's go for another caltrops upgrade. Yeah, I might have a 108% chance of winning. That's exactly what I'm saying, Ace-a-thon. Have I taken damage in this act? Not sure I took damage in that act. Okay, our starting hand is perfectly fine here. That's enough to win us the run. 100%. If I die here, I will be flabbergasted. I will be so surprised. That would just blow my mind. Cool. Banter, by the way, has unsubscribed from the channel. Sorry to see you go, Banter, by the way. It was nice having you here. I believe this is the first time I have ever noticed you say anything. And it was an excellent comment. Why didn't make the Awakened one start with 2 strength instead of just making his attack stronger by 2? Good question. I have no idea. Because for other guys, they just make the attack stronger by 2, don't they? I guess they wanted the interaction with, like, melees. I don't know why they'd want that interaction. It's not a very good interaction, honestly. It's from Philostone? No, the Awakened one also on Ascension, whenever bosses get stronger. Bosses are deadlier. On Ascension 4, when bosses become deadlier, the Awakened one starts with strength. Whereas the champs' attacks get stronger. So I don't know why it's done that way instead of the other way exactly. Missed strike, so unsub. Did I? I was thinking about like retaining stuff for Kunai the next turn and things, but probably I just ended up overthinking it and not dealing damage. Yeah, we've reached a zone where we have 100% equity. Like, unless I die within the next 5 minutes, I don't think it's possible for me to lose this run. And by die, I mean in real life. Like, yeah, like have a heart attack or something terrible. I would really prefer that didn't happen. But given that that is my primary concern at this time, I think my best play is to lower my stress as much as possible and just click on cards. And we should get there. I'm glad, Tijul. What is the heart attack equity? Shall we do the math? I'm not super active. Just like sit inside and stream all day. Probably higher than I'd like it to be. Although it's gotta be lower than my chance of like dying in a car crash if I commuted to work. I'm not sure that we took damage in Act 3. Do I get at least 30 minutes of physical activity a day? Yeah, I think I border on that. There are definitely days where I get more than that. But in terms of every single day, I think I border on 30, and that's touch and go. Like, it depends if you count just like walking around outside. Probably not walking fast enough to get my heart rate up. Probably shouldn't. What is the chance that I die in a car crash before the run ends? It's possible. If, like, somebody else had a health crisis and we had to run to the emergency room or something, I would drop this stream and go do that. And we could die in a car crash on the way there. I've had to do that once in my life. It was not great. Fortunately, it turned out okay. Yeah, I live on a fairly sizable hill. So if I want to have a walk that gets my heart rate up, I can walk up the hill. Someone could crash their car into my house. That's gonna be difficult based on where my house is located relative to the road, but I guess it's not impossible. Feels like the first 3 floors of Act 2 have more things involved than all of Act 3. Yeah, I don't know. Act 3 struggles to... Act 3 struggles to be a place where you can do things which make a difference. Some of it is just like... Some of it is nothing to do with Act 3. At the start of Act 1, I have 12 cards in my deck. At the start of Act 3, I have like 32 cards in my deck. So a large way that you interface with changing things and making decisions in this game is adding cards to change your deck, and in Act 3 your cards just don't change the deck much. Do we take damage? Nope. Not even close. And we kill with finisher. Cool. Alright, is there anything that I want to say in retrospect about that run? I'm not 100% confident about my equity evaluations as we led up to the champ. The more I play and the more I get experienced in that fight, the more confident I feel about being able to find a way to win that fight as I go through Act 2. It's also possible I was undervaluing how much front-loaded damage I had for Act 2 hallway fights, although I think we got very lucky in Act 2. I think there's no question that we got... in the like second half of Act 2 in particular, we got some lucky floors and lucky cards, and that definitely increased our chances to win. That luck there. I feel like I played pretty well. I don't remember any like big mistakes that stood out that really sucked. Basically always claim the run is over before any Act 2 boss fight. I mean, I think that's where most of my runs end. If a run is going to end, I think that's the most likely place for it to end. So our equity for the run was... Just have to draw my y-axis here. I think I start off around 75% on silent. I think we did okay at the start. We got like a good damage card, and what else did we get? Yeah, we got a backstab, a dagger spray, and a leg sweep. The leg sweep was sort of a big deal, but we didn't get anything to really knock the act out of the park. So I think like we were doing all right, and then we fought the slime boss and missed a good energy relic, which took our equity down significantly, and then we missed a good card, and our equity went down more. And then we saw the Act 2 map. So actually, that should be more like this, probably. When that happened, our equity took a massive nosedive. Wandered through Act 2. We didn't find much of anything for a while. And then we found a solution eventually into the champ fight, and we went into the champ fight thinking we were about like this likely to win it, and then we actually did win it. Took our equity up to like 90% for Act 2, and then in Act 2 eventually we found a kunai. Or Act 3 rather. It looked something like that. It's a fun run. Could I do an overexplained for the defect next? I was going to do an overexplained for the defect at the 550 sub goal. I did rest once when I didn't need to. That's too true, Craig. Although I think that was a situation where all the ways that we were going to lose the run were to dying to the champ, and resting there ensured that we could fight the champ on full HP, and I don't mind that decision. I think it was a good decision. Forgot the dip where I whiffed on an Act 2 boss relic. Okay, so it was like this or something. That was the vague idea. If a run is in, like, this zone, I'm generally enjoying it. And a run doesn't stay down here for very long, because if you're down here, you just die. So when I play this game, while the game's in this zone, I'm really happy with the game and really loving it. This is why, like, in Act 3, sometimes I start to get pretty iffy and spending a lot of time talking to Twitch chat. This is why when people talk about, like, endless mode and would I add this and would I add that, it's like, you know? I really like this zone in here. I would like to focus on that zone because that's a lot of fun. Doing an overexplain for defect now might get me to 550 subs. Well, I just did an overexplain for silent, and that didn't get me to 550 subs. What helped me beat champ? Picking up the well-laid plans was the really big thing for beating champ. Well-laid plans let us have Piercing Wail and Leg Sweep in our hand for his execute. And getting him weak and hitting multiple times with mitigation with the Piercing Wail on a ×3 attack is a very big deal. The footwork helped a lot too. Footwork helped a lot in that fight to just ensure that we weren't taking chip damage early and could spend more energy on dealing our own damage. And then the actual fight happened, and in the actual fight he didn't buff his strength at all, and he didn't metallicize at all, and both of those things helped. Although I think we were pretty good if he did like one or the other, and maybe we could have won if he did both, but it would have been hard. Torst. Yes, that's what the chart was. This was a like 2+ hour run. I've been talking a lot about everything in this one. Got a 1369 score, and -1 point for Poopy. How would I add decision making to Act 3? I think it's very difficult to do that. St. Platinum. I have done an overexplain run for the Ironclad Triple Fishy. It's on my YouTube. ! Ironclad, actually, I think. Nope. Overexplain. Nope. Nope. Well, if you go to that overexplain, that's another silent run that I overexplained. That wasn't quite as... That was in depth in a different way. For that overexplain, I wanted to focus on explaining the, like, the pieces that I'm thinking about and putting together to make the decisions. The overexplains I did on YouTube earlier were less about that and more about talking... I don't know, I talked about how the decisions I made worked in my framework, but I didn't really talk about the framework very well. So for this one, I wanted to do a better job of explaining how this was all going, talk about the deck stuff. We could do a little summary of the deck at the end, maybe. So, like, because all of this stuff still mattered. For front-loaded damage, we had Bag of Marbles. I'm gonna make the font bigger for you. For front-loaded damage, we had Bag of Marbles. We had... Sorry, I'm looking at the deck list, but you don't get to see it apparently. We had Die Die Die. We had Backstab Plus, which is a big deal. We had the Dagger Spray Plus, which was a big deal, and we had all of the Strike Pluses. And the Strike Pluses are actually pretty decent front-loaded damage. So that was our front-loaded damage, and there were definitely ways to... Sorry, we had Cloak and Dagger. And Finisher as well. There were definitely ways to miss on drawing that front-loaded damage at the start of fights where we needed it. I think watching the run, you saw how many fights killing something on turn 1 or 2 was a big deal. And so having this component of the deck is a really, really big deal. And that's something where if you're thinking about, I'm going to build like a poison deck or something like that, instead of thinking about the components of the deck and how they interact with fights, you're going to miss that you have to build that. Because these are not really cards that like synergize in a sensible way with each other. I guess Finisher, sort of. But we didn't like build a Finisher deck, right? Finisher is just a card in there that can do some pretty good damage and does the damage straight away. And we had Mitigation, which started out just being like Defend Plus a lot. At the start of Act 2, we got the upgrade to all of our strikes and defense. That helped our equity quite a lot in Act 2. And the Piercing Whales. The Piercing Whales are very good at that. And we had 4 leg sweeps eventually. And then the really big things that pushed this over the edge were immediately Footwork and Afterimage when we beat the champ, and then Kunai to actually cement the win against the Awakened one. There are a bunch of backflips in there, which we added later on, which helped like sort of smooth the deck. Another component of the deck is scaling damage. And our deck had so much mitigation that it didn't need scaling damage that much. I'm going to add well-laid plans and mitigation, actually. Well-laid plans isn't like mitigation in a traditional sense, but it ensured that we drew our mitigation the turns where we got attacked, which does help us not take damage. Our scaling damage was just Caltrops in this run. Caltrops and Bronze Scales. And, I mean, that was enough. You don't have to... If you can block really well, you don't have to have great scaling damage, because we could just outblock Awakened One. Awakened One couldn't kill us. We could have killed Awakened One with anything that killed her faster than her regen. We took 0 damage in that entire fight. And then the other thing is, like, card draw / smoothing. The elements of the deck that help you select the right cards at the right times. These are pretty big and I think worth mentioning. So for us, we had Backflip, we had well-laid plans. Like we had a Dagger Throw, sort of. Not really, but Dagger Throw is an element of our front-loaded damage that I actually forgot to mention, which helped us a little bit to smooth as well. So there's one way to think about it, which is that when we draw Dagger Throw, we aren't drawing the next card. Like if we didn't put Dagger Throw on the deck, we would have drawn the next card anyway, and that's true. And in that way, like Dagger Throw doesn't make it easier for us to mitigate or something. But the thing that way of thinking about it misses is that we drew Dagger Throw and got the output from Dagger Throw as well. So by putting Dagger Throw in the deck, we get the front-loading output and we get to see the next card if that's the card that we need to play this turn. We play the Dagger Throw and see the next card as well. So we get some extra front-loading output and the card draw / smoothing. That's basically how our deck ended up. So decent chunk of front-loaded damage, enough mitigation, and a little bit of scaling damage. Scaling damage is something that you deploy on your first cycle through the deck, and it doesn't have to be many cards at all, but these are cards which have a lot of output as the fight goes on. And Caltrops is one of the less good ones, honestly. Like Noxious Fumes and 1,000 Cuts are better. But it worked. Alright. Is Smooth Stone a smoothing relic? I guess I didn't mention Smooth Stone and Mitigation, but yeah, we bought that. That was a good pickup. We could have talked about energy in the deck as well. Energy is something that you don't have that much control over, but it's worth mentioning the Mummified Hand ensured that we could play everything in our hand most of the time, even though we were on 4 energy. Store with Smoothstone is very interesting, definitely the biggest decision of the run. You're probably right, although thinking back to it, I don't think there was another choice I would have ever made. I felt like that choice was very clearly better than the other choices. So for me, it felt pretty clear. But it was certainly an important decision. 1000 Cuts does not work with Boot. Boot only works with attack damage. Alright, let's play a defect. I'm not going to talk as much. We're going to chill out a little bit. Try to get a defect run and an Iron